Us have gone ahead and gotten rid of spirituality thinking it's nonsense. Now's a good time to re-up. I think that there might be something deeper going on. Something that we sometimes tap into. Something that we know very deeply is going on. As for the elite humans, there are other masters that they're serving.
Projections show
But a lot of us have gone ahead and gotten rid of spirituality thinking it's nonsense. Now's a good time to re-up. I think that there might be something deeper going on. Something that we sometimes tap into. Something that we know very deeply is going on. As for the elite humans, there are other masters that they're serving.
projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance.
Now, John Carpenter felt he was making this movie as a reflection of the bad government of the 80s that he felt was, very capitalist and worried about the wrong things. I would like to suggest that he tapped into the collective consciousness, if you will, the original timeline before we were hijacked by interdimensional beings that have taken us over at every level of government and moved throughout time and space like it ain't nothing. I think we all know they're here. We all deeply feel it. But everyone says it's absurd. We've been programmed to. But they use the human elite to do their bidding, and they keep them in power. They keep them happy and rich if they play the game. They also keep them intergenerationally incestuous, and this causes a lack of emotion. It actually creates sociopaths when you are sexually abused as a young person, and that's what you know in your life, and that's what the elite do to each other. It's a form of trauma-based mind control, and it's been done throughout history, obviously. It also keeps, the money in the family, keeps the blood blue, if you will.
You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for multidimensional expansion. The human power elite.
He said, you have given us entree, as in to eat. And he said, multi-dimensional expansion. Just pointing that out. There are always many layers of meaning.
And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, and this year alone, by an average 39%.
That's a lot of already billions of dollars. But all of that monetary system is a part of their control over us. It has been always. I'll do a video about this soon, but there is a wonderful account of basically elongated skull having people who really own the money for the banking systems. It's pretty crazy.
And I've just received word that our forces have won a major victory. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert. The situation is normal again.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? Now they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone, let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life too. Now I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
Do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
This same guy plays the homeless man who turns off the TV because it hurts his head. But I feel like putting the same actor in both roles helps illustrate how we are all being duped. All humans are equally as unimportant to the infiltrators. Now, of course, John Carpenter wasn't right about everything. Obviously, this is an artistic interpretation, but sometimes humans say more truth than they realize they're even saying.
Carbon dioxide, fluorocarbons, and methane have increased since 1958. Earth is being acclimatized. They are turning our atmosphere into their atmosphere.
I think it's possible they don't even need an atmosphere. However, I do think that acclimatizing our planet would be a more accurate term than terraforming, but it means the same thing. Essentially, they're trying to make this place suitable for their living requirements. And I don't know exactly what those are, but I got a hunch they're dark matter and dark energy. Anyway, it's not as simple as how this movie turns out. You can't just turn the frequency off and the aliens suddenly are visible. So Rowdy Roddy Piper tweeted that They Live is a documentary. Yeah, I like that he said that. John Carpenter said it too. And the thing is, it definitely is. It's just on what level, we don't really know. But I guarantee it's a lot closer in place for a long, long time. The infiltration runs so deep, the conditioning runs so deep, we don't even know where it stops and where it starts. But I assure you, no matter what they do to us, they cannot take away our spirituality. That is within us all, and it's real. But a lot of us have gone ahead and gotten rid of spirituality thinking it's nonsense. Now's a good time to re-up. I think that there might be something deeper going on. Something that
Made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. They are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
I love how John Carpenter has the man of spirituality saying the words along with the man who's trying to get through the signal on the television. That is representative of how we think that there is no spirituality. We are all stuck in this superficial realm that we are prisoners of, systems that have been in place for a long, long time. The infiltration runs so deep, the conditioning runs so deep, we don't even know where it stops and where it starts. But I assure you, no matter what they do to us, they cannot take away our spirituality.
They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness.
I find it very telling that he used the word annihilation right there, because that's what antimatter does with matter. It annihilates, and that's what CERN is doing every single day. And not just CERN, but all of the places they're like that. It's a lot. Their end game seems to be finding dark matter and dark energy, which is not cool.
We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. They are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
I love how John
Hertz HZ, that means that it is flashing 120 pictures per second. Now when the human eye only sees 28 to 35 frames per second?
Yes.
Why do we need technology that's transmitting 60 and 120 frames per second?
Obviously, they don't want you to see everything you're actually watching. Just like taking this photo. There's no way I could have actually watched for this photo. And if you look, my back is actually to the TV.
Yeah, that's probably 1 in 10 million shots.
Yes,
I've never seen anything like this.
Definitely.
I mean, like, and I've researched subliminal messages for, I mean, solid, for like a year at least. And I've never seen anything like that before. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you're gonna upgrade your service and let me share that.
Yeah.
They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness.
I find it very telling that he used the word annihilation right there, because that's what antimatter does with matter. It annihilates, and we all deeply feel it. But everyone says it's absurd. We've been programmed to. But they use the human elite to do their bidding, and they keep them in power. They keep them happy and rich if they play the game. They also keep them intergenerationally incestuous, and this causes a lack of emotion. It actually creates sociopaths when you are sexually abused as a young person, and that's what you know in your life, and that's what the elite do to each other. It's a form of trauma-based mind control, and it's been done throughout history, obviously. It also keeps, the money in the family keeps the blood blue, if you will.
You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for multidimensional expansion. The human power elite.
He said, "You have given us entree," as in to eat. And he said, multi-dimensional expansion. Just pointing that out. There are always many layers of meaning.
And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, and this year alone, by an average 39%.
That's a lot of already billions of dollars. But all of that monetary system is a part of their control over us. It has been always. I'll do a video about this soon, but there is a wonderful account of basically Elongated Skull having people who really own the money for the banking systems. It's pretty crazy.
And I've just received word that our forces have won a major victory. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert. The situation is normal again.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? And they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone. Let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life too. Now I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
You do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
This same guy plays the homeless man who turns off the TV because it hurts his head. But I feel like putting the same actor in both roles helps illustrate how we are all being duped. All humans are equally as unimportant to the infiltrators. Now, of course, John Carpenter wasn't right about everything. Obviously, this is an artistic interpretation, but sometimes humans say more truth than they realize they're even saying.
Carbon dioxide, fluorocarbons, and methane have increased since 1958. Earth is being acclimatized. They are turning our atmosphere into their atmosphere.
I think it's possible they don't even need an atmosphere. However, I do think that acclimatizing our planet would be a more accurate term than terraforming, but it means the same thing. Essentially, they're trying to make this place suitable for their living requirements. And I don't know exactly what those are, but I got a hunch they're dark matter and dark energy. Anyway, it's not as simple as how this movie turns out. You can't just turn the frequency off and the aliens suddenly are visible. So Roddy Piper tweeted that They Live is a documentary. Yeah, I like that he said that. John Carpenter said it too. And the thing is, it definitely is. It's just on what level, we don't really know. But I guarantee it's a lot closer to the truth than John Carpenter himself even knows.
That's still with us. They Live is a documentary about what's going on now.
Indeed, Mr. Carpenter, indeed. But what is now? Are there many nows going on right now? No, now, everyone. Anyway, so originally I was going to end with showing you the most epic fight scene ever in a movie. That happens because Roddy Piper's character is trying to get his friend to look in the sunglasses that helps him see the truth, but his friend absolutely refuses to take a moment and look and just calls him crazy, and they literally fight for like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. But when I show that scene, I get blocked in several countries before it even finishes uploading. So go find the They Live fight scene and check it out. The fight scene is a metaphor because all the guy wants to do is get him to wear the glasses, but he refuses. It's just like trying to tell someone about the Mandela effect, or trying to tell someone about Jesus, or, you know, reptilian shapeshifters, or anything like that uncovers any kind of deep knowledge. That is like this fight scene. People will defend what they believe in, even if their ignorance is actually hurting them, and they won't see that. It is so frustrating that they don't want to hear it, and they want to remain in cognitive dissonance, and that's their free will to choose that. Anyway, so please find that fight scene, since I can't show it, and watch it, and while thinking of what it metaphorically represents, which is how hard it is to get people to even take a look at the possibility that they've been under a delusion their whole lives. I think it's correct to call the infiltrators aliens. I think it's correct to call them demons. I think it's correct to say that the infiltration itself is evil or is the devil. But we have been infiltrated, and knowing that changes everything. All of my research leads me back to this fact. We have been infiltrated, and it's something that confuses people from knowing their oneness with the divine simplicity. And don't misunderstand me, I'm not talking about something new age. I don't even use those foolish titles. All of the infiltration includes these masks of what's real. They've masked everything about our spirituality, everything about what we're capable of, everything about our oneness with the divine and each other. To keep ourselves separate from this is foolish. And without us coming to a consensus of who the enemy is, we're lost in the dark. We're leaving ourselves vulnerable. The enemy will present himself as the solution. So we best to remember that. We've been duped, the entire human race. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for watching, everybody. I have a lot more videos on the way, so bear with me. Please leave a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, much love to you.
They give up baseball and either go into some other sport or some other activity. But he said that's really not how it works. Actually, the way to break down the baseball would be to make the salaries go very high. And the idea behind this was that as the salaries got ridiculously high, there would be a certain amount of discontent and antagonism as people resented athletes being paid so much, and the athletes would begin more and more to resent among themselves what other players were paid, and would tend to abandon the sport. And these high salaries then also could break the owners and alienate the fans. And then the fans would support soccer, and the baseball fields could be used as soccer fields. Wasn't said definitely this would have to happen, but if the international flavor didn't come around rapidly enough, this could be done. There was some comment along the same lines about football, although I seem to recall he said football would be harder to dismantle because it was so widely in the colleges as well as the professional leagues, and would be harder to tear down. And there was something also about the violence in football that met a psychological need that was perceived, and people have a need for this vicarious violence, and so football, for that reason, might be left around to meet that vicarious need.
Edgar Allan Poe is one of the most legendary writers of all time. His only novel that he wrote
same
was
thing
about
true
four
with
shipwrecked
hockey.
men who ran out of food and
Hockey
resort to
had more of an
cannibalism, eating
international
a cowboy
flavor
boy
and would
named
be
Richard Parker.
emphasized.
46
There's
years
some
after it was published, a yacht sank
foreseeable
in real life, and 3
international
of the 4
competition
survivors also
about hockey
decided to eat the cabin
particularly
boy,
soccer.
who was
At
also
that time,
named
hockey was
Richard Parker.
international between the
Morgan
United States and
Robertson
Canada.
was an author
I was
who
kind of surprised
wrote a lot
because
of
I
short
thought the
stories, and his
speaker
most famous
just never impressed me as being at all a hockey fan, and I am. But and it turns out he was not. He just knew about the game and what it would do to this changing sports program. But in any event, soccer was to be the keystone of athletics because it's already a worldwide sport. In South America and Europe and parts of Asia and the United States should get on the bandwagon. And all this would foster international competition so that we would all become citizens of the world to a greater extent than citizens of our own narrow nations. There was some discussion about hunting. Not surprisingly, hunting requires guns, and gun control is a big element in these plans, and I don't remember the details much, but the idea is that gun ownership is a privilege and not everybody should have guns, and hunting was an inadequate excuse for owning guns, and everybody should be restricted in gun ownership. The few privileged people who should be allowed to hunt could maybe rent or borrow a gun from official quarters rather than own their own. After all, everybody doesn't have a need for a gun, was the way it was put. Very important with sports was sports for girls. Athletics would be pushed for girls, and this was intended to replace dolls. Baby dolls would still be around, a few of them, but you would not see the Number and variety of dolls and dolls would not be pushed because girls should not be thinking about babies and reproduction. Girls should be out on the athletic field just as the boys are. Girls and boys really need not be all that different. Tea sets were to go the way of dolls, and all these things that traditionally were thought of as feminine would be greatly de-emphasized as girls got into more masculine pursuits. And just one of the things I recall was that the sports pages would be full of the scores of girls' teams just right there, right along with the boys' teams. And that's recently begun to, after 20 years, recently begun to appear in our local papers. The girls' sports scores are right along with the boys' sports scores. So all of this to change the role model of what a young girl should look to be while she's growing up. She should look to be an athlete rather than to look forward to being a mother. Entertainment. Movies would gradually be made more explicit as regards sex and language. After all, sex and rough language are real, and why pretend that they are not? There would be pornographic movies in the theaters, on television, and VCRs were not around at that time, but it indicated that these cassettes would be available, and video cassette players would be available for use in the home, and pornographic movies would be available on these VCRs as well as in the neighborhood theater and on your television. It said something like people, you'll see people in the movies doing everything you can think of. Went on to say that, and all of this is to bring sex out in the open. That was another comment that was made several times, a term, sex out in the open. Violence would be made more graphic. This was intended to desensitize people to violence. There might need to be a time when people would witness real violence and be a part of it. Later on it'll become clear where this is headed. So there would be more realistic violence in entertainment, would make it easier for people to adjust. People's attitudes towards death would change, and they would not be so fearful of it, but more accepting of it. And not be so aghast at the sight of dead people or injured people. We don't need to have a genteel population paralyzed by what they might see. People would just learn to say, well, I don't want that to happen to me. This was the first statement suggesting that the plan includes numerous human casualties which the survivors would see. This particular aspect of the presentation came back in my memory very sharply a few years later when a movie about the Lone Ranger came out, and I took my very young son to see it, and early in the movie were some very violent scenes. One, the victim's shot in the forehead, and there was sort of a splat where the bullet entered his forehead and some blood, and I remember regretting that I took my son, and remember of feeling anger toward the doctor who spoke. Not that he made the movie, but he agreed to be part of this movement, and I was repelled by the movie, and it brought back this aspect of his presentation very sharply in my memory. As regards music, he made a rather straightforward statement like, music will get worse. And in 1969, the rock music was getting more and more unpleasant.
And at the same time, America secretly sold weapons to Iran and illegally diverted the money to the Contra-revolutionaries in Central America.
During the war, the United States sent a special envoy to see Saddam in 1983. He was Donald Rumsfeld, now the U.S. Defense Secretary. The two men discussed how to reinforce Iraq against a common enemy. This was at a time when Iraq was using chemical weapons on Iranian troops. U.S. companies were supplying components with Washington's knowledge.
1, 2, 1, 2. We are
By
live
1990,
here at
President George Bush Sr. tricked Iraq into another war with another oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. How? by supplying Kuwait with horizontal drills that could reach beneath the border of Iraq and siphon oil from Iraq's oil fields. Kuwait used the U.S.-made drills to steal 300,000 barrels of oil per day from Iraq, worth over $3 billion annually.
On the ground or beat them up or just cause all this disarray when they're doing and fighting for the same goal as you. You're either trying to defeat your own side and you're like an agent or, you know, secret agent or something trying to defeat your own side, which I don't believe, or you just are out there for anarchy. A lot of people forget there are people out there who just hate the system. They don't care what system, they just want to hate the system. And they go out wanting to cause this chaos and panic, and they want to stir things up, and it's fun to them. And I'm asking myself all those possibilities, and that's why I said I've got to go out to my subscribers, because you guys are really observant. Not only a lot of facts that I miss when I'm like on other topics, so it really does help me out when you guys give me your honest opinion about this stuff. And the last thing I want is you guys to agree with me. I just want to understand you and then help me form my opinion based on the facts that we all have. Let me see if anyone else said anything. Rusty says, if you are fighting for free speech yet don't want another group to say what they want in free speech, then you're a hypocrite. Nothing else. Rusty, bro, that's exactly what I thought in the beginning. That's exactly what led me to the thought, are they anarchists? Are they just out there to have fun? In their mind, I know a lot of us don't see beating up people or causing chaos as fun, but I'm going to tell you right now, some people really do. Honestly, and there's a lot of people out there that feel that way. Hillary says, yup, 1984, and they're referencing a book, 1984, about like a fascist government and people going against that fascist government. Michelle says, yes, these people make themselves look like fascists. When you stop people with political violence, that's definition of fascism. Bonnie saying hi to everyone. BLM and this Antifa are the definition of hypocrites, says Rusty. They need to be arrested and charged with insurrection, says Candy Archibald. Lift the Veil in here. Buddy, what's up, my dude? Good to see ya. Man, we got to stream sometime soon. I want to know what happened to you when you went out there. I want to make a video on this because I covered it a little bit. I woke up the other morning and I'd found out that you got accosted by people that were calling themselves Antifa members. I saw they wrapped you up in their banner. They ripped your phone out of your hand. I want to hear what happened. I want to hear your side of it. Let's make an appointment and get you in here to tell everyone. I think that'd be I think it'd be good for my subscribers to hear what happened from your side. Because I know a lot of my subscribers are trying really hard just to figure out what this is, what it means, and if it's gonna turn into like a bigger movement. Are they growing? Are they not? You know, all these things go through our heads when we're sitting around thinking about this. But in the end, though, we have to sit back and take a step out of this and look at it from the outside. That's what I hope we all do. Because, you know, we're getting fed information from all these different sources all the time. Whether it's the TV, whether it's the internet, whether it's the radio, whether it's other people. We're getting fed information. We have to sit back at all times and say, when the source gives us information, does that source have a political agenda or any agenda? Because a lot of times people have just an agenda to get views on a platform or to become viral, or they have an agenda, like I said, just like it looks like Antifa does. The agenda is just to crash the system, just to stir things up, just to give everybody a big middle finger and run around having a blast, breaking things and causing all the extremeness, you know? Let's see what everybody's saying here. Lift the Veil says, I didn't lose anything important. True. But, my bro, when these types of things happen, people that care about you, like your viewers and me and my viewers and people that are, you know, behind you on certain things that you do, you know, when these things happen to you, We have to get it out there, you know? It doesn't matter who came up and took your camera away from you and took it and ran away with it. It's not right, and it's against the... That's what really got me. That's what led me down this train of thought. When I saw them do that to you, I said to myself, they're not for free speech. No one would stop someone from broadcasting if they're for free speech. If they're for information getting out there, people speaking their mind, you can't take their cameras from them. You can't steal them. You can't smash them. It's not like you owed that guy $100 and he's like, that's mine. You owe me money, punk. That's not what happened there. You know what I'm saying? Bonnie says, Unirock, they are not going to get more rights acting like this. They are just going to cause rights to be lost. They could even erupt the martial law matter and make it happen. And Bonnie, that is such an intelligent observation, because I've been asking myself straight from the beginning, and I'm just asking myself this, guys. You know me. I like to look at things from all sides. That's what I do. But I've been asking myself, is that the end goal here? Is the end goal to just cause the chaos that will start the fire roaring? Because right now we have a little bit of a blaze, okay? A fire just kind of started. There was a spark that happened over this statue thing. All these protests, all these rallies have caused the spark to ignite, and it's getting a little bigger. And I feel that it does seem like exactly what you said. Antifa's trying to take that small little burning fire that's going right now and turn it into a blaze. It would only take martial law. Martial law is, in case anyone doesn't know what martial law is, it's where the government steps up, locks down the citizens because of an extreme danger to them. And they go in and they take over in a militaristic manner. And it's reserved for extreme times of war or danger, or like a hurricane or tornado. You know, when people getting on the streets and being out of their homes could be in danger to someone else, martial law is invoked. Or if there's a lot of riots and other things happening, then it can be invoked also. Just so that everybody knows. So could that be an end goal for them? Like, I sat down and made a list and I said, what could their motivations be? Well, first I said, what are they telling us their motivations are? Then I said, and this is the messed up thing. It's not like we're getting Antifa standing up and there's like some guy who's like the head of this organization and he's saying, this is what we want. This is what we're going to do. And I think that tells us something too. Since they don't have a figurehead who's out there really pushing, you know, we want this to happen and then we'll stop attacking people. Since we don't have that, it really does seem like they're just a loosely organized, like anyone could become one, Antifa. You could just, like right now, go downstairs in your house, get dressed up how they do, and run out to any type of protest and become an Antifa member. That is a little bit, I was going to say dangerous, but I think it's more like chaotic. You know, when you don't have the thought behind what you're doing out there, it's definitely, at the end goal is anarchy or chaos. And that's the truth. Let me see what else you guys are saying before I jump, because I don't want this to turn into a long video. It's getting there, though. Lord Frybread, martial law, alphabet government, agencies can take control of businesses like stores that sells good. They can take care of like anything. Hey, Mr. D.B. Cooper himself, fist bump, my bro. How you been, man? I haven't seen you in a while. Good to have you, dude. I made a whole movie based on our little comment war that happened, man. I'm glad you're here, dude. Okay, there's Lift the Veil. Yeah, but then that would be a thing. I'd say polos were Nazi. That's the weirdest part. It seemed like they targeted you just because of how you were dressed. I mean, come on, man. If you're for free speech, you can't sit and hate on people for how they dress, because dressing is an extension of your thoughts. You know, the way you look, the way you represent yourself. It's all a representation of who you are, and that's the foundation of free speech. You can't sit and hate on, make judgments. You got to sit back and tell yourself, I'm not going to judge people. I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying. So that's why Antifa seems completely opposite of what they're saying they are. Let me take a few more comments and then I got to jump out of here. Buddha Girl, yes, Unirock. Uniform so easy to put together, but in the heat, it's got to be pretty oppressive. That's true too. It is, and they make that, they take that, all those negative things that they, you know, they're also running around breaking things, and they could get, look, Nathan could have jumped over that thing, grabbed that dude by the throat, and beat the living hell out of him, and I don't even think, as long as they had the recording of him stealing his phone, I don't even think Nathan would have gotten in trouble for it. Someone comes up to you and rips something out of your hands that belongs to you, you can take measures as long as it's not extreme to get your stuff back. Or, you know, you can just pin the dude down, put him in a chokehold, and wait till the police get there to sort it out. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it's just... And Nathan, dude, I am pissed that they held you at that thing like they did. I would be filing every charge in the book against those assholes. It was just crazy. Make America sane again. Anarchy is the absence of any form of government. Chaos is a state of utter confusion, whether a form of government exists or not. Very true. Very true. William Young, one could... stake through an Antifa crowd and they would say your skin is Nazi. It's weird what they say and how they judge people and what they do, and that's what's brought the confusion on. I think that's what made a lot of people sit back and say, like, okay, so who are they? Like, seriously, what do they want and who are they? Because that's what I've been asking myself. Anytime someone says the word Antifa, or anytime someone says Antifa, what's that? I'm like, dude, we don't want to go there right now because it'll take an hour just to freaking explain it to you. And it really does, and it's confusing as hell. I wonder if it scares people off from investigating it. I mean, you know it stands for anti-fascist, but we know that they're... And that's another thing, too. I've asked and I want to get this point out there before I end out. I want to make sure I'm fair to all sides here. So I was talking to Affected Collective last night, okay? And... we were saying, like, look, what if there was a group of people that were anti-fascism, they were for free speech, they went out, and what if a bunch of people got together and said, look, we want to make those people look bad, let's go around, put on masks, trash anything we see, you know, do the opposite of what we say we're doing, and we'll make this Antifa movement look like shit. That's another, not reason, excuse, it's not even logical right now. I'm just saying that was one train of thought. I'm trying to explain where people are going with their train of thought in this, and I'm trying to say to you guys, please, after this is over, if you watch this later, if you're watching this after the broadcast, leave a comment and tell me what you think. As long as you're professional and respectful, I'll read it. Hey, skies above. Buddha Girl says, it didn't look like Antifa grabbing Nathan. It looked like a bunch of low mentality punks who saw Nathan as a threat with his camera, pure and simple. Gang mentality losers. And that's right, too. Buddha Girl, excellent, excellent point, because we forget sometimes that when these type of things are going on, a lot of times people aren't making judgments based on their political view, and they're out there just getting lost in the gang mentality or the extremism of what's going on, and they're just... sometimes in the heat of the moment, people lose what they're fighting for, and they just start going crazy. That's another piece of the puzzle we should at least think about. Lift the veil. Some of Antifa are saying what Unirock just said. Oh, I didn't know that. See, now it'd be good. I'd like to be able to get some video of this. So yeah, Lift the Veil just said some people are saying that Antifa started out one way, and then a bunch of people jumped up around the country and said, we're going to make Antifa look bad and go crazy. Because look, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. I think that was, when I first heard about them, that's what people were telling me at least. They're anti-fascist, they're anti-hate, they're anti-oppression, they're for free speech. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I saw what they were doing, and I'm like, what? Weird, man. And that's why I made this video. That's why I did this. Iron J-Rod, Unirock, all these groups are as cleverly named domestic terror groups. If you disagree with what they say or do, you disagree with their name. Okay, my friend, I gotcha. William Young says, what's going on is people are showing what is in their heart. William Young, my dude, man, you just hit this right. You hit the nail on the head. You drove it through the board. It came out the other side, dude. That is the damn truth. I have to read that again. What is going on is people are showing what's in their heart. And it's true. And I always say this, man. It's always paramount that we all set an example, even if no one's watching us, and we behave to represent the way we feel about these issues. So yes, we should always be keeping in mind that what you're for. And I know what I'm for. I'm not going to tell you what you're for, but I'm for free speech. I'm for none of us arguing and fighting. And I'm for all of us getting together, uniting. I mean, it's in my damn name. Uniting together, getting along and understanding each other. That means we're going to disagree, because if we didn't disagree, we wouldn't have to understand each other. But that's what I'm for. I've said it ever since I started my channel. So I try to show that through at all times. And dude, you just nailed it, man. You just nailed it. They're showing what's really inside here. And yeah, when you got hate inside you, then it comes out when you get into those situations. That's another piece of the puzzle we got to look at. All right, guys. Let me see if I have any more Unirock signs. Tracy, Unirock, they do seem to have sprung into the public eye. Very much so. Very much so. And I wondered if they were even going to talk about what happened with them, you know, destroying cameras and taking people's means to get their voice out and stealing it from people. I wondered if they were even going to show it in the media. And I was surprised to see it. But what they did show is Antifa attacking people. That's all I've seen so far, but I didn't go really deep. They could have been reporting what happened to Nathan and other people too, because Nathan wasn't the only one. And I like whoever said that they could have just identified Nathan as a threat, so they attacked him. Because that makes sense if you were in the moment. Because we also have to remember, like, keeping our mindset to where they were in the heat of a moment. Not all of them made the decision. Not all of them initiated the decision to do what they did. But they all followed behind it. And that, you're just as guilty if you follow behind it, though. Anyway, I'm starting to say obvious things, and that's when I know I've got an end out of video. All right. So I'm going to... Oh, wait, one more. Andrew Gaskins. Healthy debates, accept our disagreements, and learn. That's the beauty of being human. And it's true. And that's the thing. Like, when I was talking to Affected Collective last night, the main thing before we went on, she was like, man, what's up with all this hate anymore? What's up with all these people disagreeing and fighting and all this going on? And she said, when so much is out there for us to do and focus on and look at, and it's so true, you know? When you get caught up in all this, you're distracted from the things that are really important to you. And I mean, I know that it's important to fight for free speech, but I want, at the end of this, I want to pose a question to everybody out there. Hopefully, some people will see this. But my question is what is going on right now, all of it, all the protests, all the fighting, all the bickering, is what is going on out there really helping anything? Are we making headway on anything? And that's my last and final statement here. I think we all should consider that in everything we try to do. Because you know me, man, I'm just trying to understand all this. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Anyway, I'll be back really soon. I'm putting together a show for you guys. I would love for you to stop by and chill with me. You guys rock, and I love every second I get to do this for you. But until the next time, be nice in those comments, y'all. Those are people on the other side. And even now, it's the most important time to always be kind. And never be afraid to speak your mind. And that's the truth, baby.
Copy, and we'll stop, and we'll take this opportunity to congratulate you, Atlanta.
Let's roll out.
Best wishes.
City. We have seen a lot of looting. For those following me on Twitter, you may have seen last night a tweet that I had sent out showing individuals leaving a store with a bunch of electronics, just looting in broad daylight, carrying out TVs and everything else. They're doing this while police and other citizens are out trying to rescue people, save people's lives. Now we have the governor saying that the entire National Guard has been called out in Texas to help with this situation, and the flooding is expected to be ongoing for some time down here as waters continue to rise. Now, last we checked last night, they had said they had housing for 40-some thousand people. They said they lacked adequate housing for 700,000 people.
Okay, friends, it's Monday, August 28th, about 1 o'clock, 2017. Harvey re-enters the Gulf. Rain shifts our way. Okay, here's the storm tracking. Alright, now check this out, guys. Look at this, they've already got it projected. They know exactly what this storm's going to do, you know? They know exactly what it's going to do. I thought I'd throw this video up and let you know that they're controlling it. There's no way they're not controlling this storm. Talk to you later. Howdy kids, how do I? Bye-bye, friends. Okay, let's remember back. This is August 28th, 2017. Let's remember back to this area right here. If anybody's familiar with what this is about, let's have a look at this right here. Why Operation JADEHAM 15 is freaking the internet, okay? The Washington Post. If you notice, they had it set in sectors. They had the military in their training. I'm going to throw one way out there in left field. Could they have possibly been taking elevation, site training, just some of the things that they do as the government operates and the military obeys orders and just follows orders and do what they're supposed to do. The reason I'm going down this little rabbit hole is because I noticed during Hurricane Sandy how it was manipulated. It started in the Atlantic, way south, and started to be nothing, stalled, and then became a great hurricane that came up the East Coast and did all the damage it did in 2012. That was pretty wild, guys. So could this been a preempt to another situation that we could be having? Okay, because if you look at the tracking of what they've already proclaimed this hurricane is going to do when it came in and how it was set up, and see how they've already proclaimed how it was going to come in and do this loop and do all this other stuff. Now they're talking about it's going to come in as a 4, come back out, and come back and nail again. You know, these were some of the projections of this hurricane. We already know what this hurricane's done, the damage is done, and you know, it's just ongoing. So could we be looking at something? Here's some of the live footage of some of the damage that's done. Could we be looking at something that started during these exercises here that would have set in motion why it would be important for them to see if they could develop another? I'm just throwing it out there. Would I believe this? I don't want to believe nothing. But anymore, I don't even understand the government, how it operates, and why it kills, maims, and destroys for the gain that it does. You know, for people that have absolutely done nothing to us. So, you know, you tell me. You know, we live in the land of that's owned and run by Satan, and we have a lot of followers of Satan, and
that's where we're at.
You know, I just thought I'd throw this one out here. Could Jade Helm have been a preempt to this great storm that we're seeing now and many more to come? Think about that one for a while. Yale Marine One, Vaughn, on August 28th, 2017. Bye-bye, friends. Howdy, kids. Hug to wife.
I just read a comment from a subscriber who said Trump has formally recognized Antifa as a terrorist organization, and that is not true. Trump has not formally recognized Antifa as a terrorist organization, though there are many people calling for Trump to do just that. This is whitehouse.gov, their petition page. We the people, your voice in the White House. Do I think these petitions do anything? No. But I do think that they put on notice those in D.C., those in the executive branch, those in the White House, that many Americans are seeing what Antifa really is. And many want Antifa to be declared a domestic terrorist organization, which is exactly what it is. 311,498 have signed already. 100,000 is the goal. Obama started these petitions, I believe, and he stated that on any petition, if it received 200,000 signatures, he would take action. He never did. Will Trump? Probably not. Is this a registry for all of us to just put our name and email addresses down so that our government knows what we stand for? Perhaps. Who cares? They have all of the information on us already. And do I think that this petition will actually get Trump to recognize Antifa as a terrorist organization? Probably not. But it will put on notice. It will alert Trump, the White House, our government, to see that many Americans do see Antifa for what it really is. So, yeah, I recommend coming over here to sign your name. Let's get those numbers even higher. The link is below.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIcke.com.
Phil Restino introduced me to Morris, who's based in Cambodia. Morris is a journalist, has worked in mainstream media, lived in London for a bit, where he launched a YouTube channel called 108 Morris 108. And on the channel, Morris puts up videos with analysis of the big geopolitical happenings of the day. He's got over 35,000 subscribers. He's a really, really nice fella, very thoughtful, really easy to chat with. And I really like his videos. Like I said, he's in Cambodia these days. And basically, the experience that he garnered through his time in the media, added to the experiences he's picked up traveling the world over the years, have kind of left him in a unique position to talk about the big stories of the day. And I was delighted to get in touch with him this morning, just before lunchtime, because of time differences there. He's known as Morris, and I spoke with him earlier on, caught up with him. This is how it went. I think you will enjoy hearing him. Morris and me. Morris, thanks so much for connecting to the program. I'm really delighted that you have done. I've been spending a lot of time of late on your YouTube channel, which is excellent. And as we're speaking today, you and I'm going to tweet out a link for our listeners whom I recommend highly that they subscribe to Morris 108 or 108 Morris 108 on YouTube. I'm going to do that. thanks so much for coming on. You're in Cambodia, by the way. What's it like in Cambodia? What's life like for you there before we start talking about your videos?
Well, there's an abundance of nature which is not unique to Asia, but you know, everything grows everywhere. Everything is green and lush, and there's water flowing isn't far away, but the nature is also intense. You know, the wind is, the lightning is, the rains are, so it feels like life itself. And apart from that, the people are largely poor where I live. I don't live in the big city, and they honestly have big smiles for no reason at all.
Watch this silliness. I mean, this is just silliness. See that lady moving in front of the moving van? Let's watch it again. See the lady in black moving in front of the maroon van? Do you know why she did that? So she could be captured in this dynamic photograph. Have a great day. Watch this.
Specifically, all the men who accept the fact that we were born with balls. And I'm not talking about that nutsack that you got hanging from the back of your truck. I'm talking about the...
Meine Damen und Herren.
All right, good morning, folks. Hey, I'm going to use this as like an intermission between part 1 and part 2. Well, let's have a little talk. Let me give you a little explanation of what you're seeing so you understand fully. Okay, this is the big lie right here is a German propaganda technique that was used by Hitler. And it is outlined in Hitler's book called Mein Kampf, which means, Mein Kampf means my struggle. Okay, Mein Kampf, right here, Mein Kampf, right here, my struggle. Okay, so this technique is being used right now against the American public because it's a psychological warfare. And the whole thing is, and we're going to read over this one time so you understand what's going on, and then I'm going to show you what the Bible says, and then I'm going to show you the way this plays out, and then we're going to do part 2 where I'm going to take this to 2 Thessalonians because that's what the Lord showed me yesterday. It's mind-boggling the way this fits together. It's perfection. Again, the Lord, once you understand what's going on, the Lord, you know, reveals the meaning of the Bible is so obvious once you've been converted, because, you know,
Hey guys, Enter the Stars. This is a kind of a catch-all video of series that I'm working on. One is currently in progress, which is The Strain, and we're seeing real-time synchronicities playing out. We're going to cover those in a minute. But this is a new series that I started watching, The Mist, just yesterday, before this strange mist descended over Great Britain, over the beaches there, and sickened 233 people. So it's unbelievable because in this third episode of The Mist, they show us the red balloons. Now, what are they doing with these balloons? Well, 33 years ago, the song 99 Red Balloons came out, and we talked all about the synchronicities surrounding that and the significance of it. That this is all about some kind of a strain. And they let these balloons off. They're trapped in this mall, and they let these balloons off to try to signal for help with notes attached to them.
We talked about this.
And I guess what she's doing here is writing notes as the mist is surrounding them, and she's writing notes on these balloons that she's going to release into the air. Please help, we're in the mall. Shocking. And they release the balloons off into the mist. To call for help. So the premise of this series is there's this mist that descends on the city, and the mist causes people to basically go crazy, and also hallucinations become real. So everyone is run and taken shelter in like shopping malls and churches and things. And this is one of the characters. He dies actually in the first couple episodes, but he's got this death's head hawk moth on his tattoo on his back. Now another one lands on this woman's hand before she runs into this guy. It's kind of like a premonition. The thing about the death's head hawk moth is it's got this skull on the thorax. If you look at the movie cover poster for Silence of the Lambs, that is the insect that is on there. It is the death's head hawk moth. There's something about this insect that these occultists love, and so this guy ends up dying. A moth flies into his mouth and wings spread out of his back, and it kills him basically. Now, as we discussed in previous videos, the opposite date, the mirror date of the eclipse is May 12th. Listen.
6 people were killed by wildfire here in Ridgeville on May 12th in 1860.
So obviously you heard that. That's May 12th, the mirror date of the eclipse. We're seeing eclipse.
Junto com R$100. Cada saco que eles estão aí esfregando na tua cara agora tem 100 mil. Vamos lá, políticos, pode sair aí, seus bandidos. Pode começar lá. É meu, é meu. Por mais disso aqui pra nós não perder nosso tempo, eu...
Eu vejo essa crise política um prejuízo para a nossa nação. Se nós não fizermos alguma coisa para tirar e fazer uma renovação, o Brasil tem que ter renovação. Temos que votar em pessoas dignas, conhecer em quem votamos. Votando no Zé Bonitinho não é aquilo que nós queremos.
Cerveja do que eles já têm, que é o políticos.org.
Seu país! Vai comigo, mais alto!
Essa medida, como ele...
Vem pra rua! Vem pra rua! Vem pra rua!
Vai mudar esse país!
Brazil agrees to let people dig in the Amazon.
And that's what it is. I mean, I've tried debating with people who disagree with Trump, and they have their arguments, and I try to engage in conversation. But it always comes back to you're a racist, or he's hateful, or he wants to kick immigrants out. It's not the case, but people don't want to listen to it. They read the headlines in the news, and that's what they make their opinion on. And it's emotion-driven, not fact-driven.
Life in communist Bulgaria was much better for the common people, at least during communist times, than now, in the times of so-called democracy. Actually, there was no real communism, and now there is no real democracy. They are just two different illusions created for the purpose of herding the common man. In their essence, they are both plutocratic forms of governing the people, means the rich class rules the poor. Well, at least in Bulgaria, that was the situation. This class of the poorer, they had much better lives and living conditions in those times. We didn't really have any poor people as such. Everybody had a job, just really everybody. The salaries were more or less equal. Let's say in a big factory, the cleaning lady would get only, I don't know, maybe 3 times less than the director of the factory or something like this. Of course, you would get perks, but at least in terms of salary. And with this salary, each and everybody in Bulgaria could afford some sort of house and car. And the best of all was that money was not so important in those times, because more or less your life was programmed in terms of money. And the choice that you would have is what you would like to do with your life. Would you like to be more creative and go into arts or some other job? It wasn't so much money based, because in any case you would get more or less the same amount of money, at least as long as you stay in this lower class. Which again wasn't really a poor class. We didn't have any poor or needy people at that time at all, homeless, stuff like this. No, it didn't exist. And let's say some 10 or 15%, something like that, I don't know exactly, they were member of the Communist Party, and they would get various perks, but not really so much to make a drastic difference in their lifestyle. Only those on the very top, like really the selected minority, the ruling families, only they would be super rich. My parents were not members of the Communist Party, but at least my father, he had, let's say, a job that would be the maximum one could reach without being a member of the party. And what kind of jobs you would get would depend on your connections with people, the friends. So the more influential friends you had, the more favorable job you would get. It wasn't really that much matter of money, and that's why people had other values. That was the most important thing. The mass media wasn't so nasty as it is now. There was no violence on TV, and there was no violent crime. It is as simple as that. The children were brought up with the values of pure heart, being nice to others, being a sincere, modest person. People had time to love each other, to care for their families. Nowadays they have been turned into hyenas, just scavenging desperately for money here and there. They have even forgotten to love each other even within the family. Another peculiarity of Bulgaria was the super excellent I mean, relatively, educational system, certainly one of the best in the world at that time. What pupils would learn in primary and secondary school was 1 year earlier than Russia. The same stuff that they would learn in Russia, they would learn it exactly 1 year earlier in Bulgaria. And Russia was at that time 1 year ahead than the Western educational system. So basically, people would get 2 extra years of education if they complete primary school compared to America at that time. And also, not only the material that was being taught was much more, also the standards, the marks that were expected from the students were much, much higher than now. And than the marks that the students get, let's say, on the other side of the Iron Curtain. And contrary to the popular belief, people were very well informed about the world situation. They were not brainwashed by the mainstream media, although they were trying slightly to do that. For example, in the news, they were showing scenes from the Western so-called capitalistic world, but it always would be some protest demonstration or something negative. But people had their ways to get real news. For example, in Bulgaria, we had a radio broadcasting, I think, from Western Germany. It was called Free Europe in Bulgarian language, where you could hear real news about what was going on there. And also people were traveling, like, for example, my father, he worked in the Western world, so he was coming back and he was telling us how is life there, how is it in reality. So there was no lack of information. People were very, very well informed. So now about the transition to so-called democracy. We heard there were rumors that there are big changes going on in Russia and in some East European countries, but it was quite vague. People were not sure what kind of changes, and nobody thought it would influence Bulgaria very quickly, or so it came like a thunder from clear sunny skies for us. I remember exactly, it was shortly after 8 o'clock in the evening, and 8 to 8:30 there was a news broadcast on TV in Bulgaria. So men were watching as usual, and my father was watching, and all of a sudden I saw his face became very strange. So what has happened? They announced on TV that we are switching to a new democratic regime very soon, just like that, without any warning or anything. The first reaction of my father was he sincerely thought he's dreaming, like at night. Really, he thought so. But after some time, he realized that he's not dreaming. In the beginning, he was, yeah, this is very strange. I've heard about these things that one dreams and then one realizes in the dream that one is dreaming. And he thought that that's the case. That's why he hears such news. But anyway, the news was real. And the transition started like this, really very, very quick. So what was the transition all about? It was very well controlled demolition of everything good in the society that we had. For example, as if their priority was that first of all they have to close all the centers for food control. There was very strict control that the food is extremely healthy in Bulgaria. like the level of chemicals, like nitrates and stuff like that, the allowed level was more than 4 times lower than what is now allowed according to the European standards. And they were really enforced, these rules. People were growing all kinds of fruits and vegetables at home, and they were extremely careful not to put too much fertilizer. The food was really superb in communist times, but people were not appreciating that. For example, my father would come back and say, oh, if you go to a supermarket in England, you just enter and you see 20 types of yogurt, and then he would show us pictures and they all had such shiny packages. It was really mesmerizing, truly a fairy tale. So we had only one type of yogurt, the yogurt that was manufactured in the local milk factory or plant. And it was very pure. It was made of pure real milk. So as the transition started, the first thing, their priority was to close all the centers where the food was controlled and measured on local markets and so on, and to import new machines for so-called more modern advanced manufacturing of foods and everything. And the cheese and milk is since then not made of real milk anymore. And the farmers, they most of them just gave up having animals simply because they cannot sell their milk. Its market price is so low that they can't cover their expenses, because the milk products are now made of some sort of powders. I don't know what exactly, but it's not natural. Maybe it comes from China, stuff like that. And the same with the fruits and vegetables. In communist times, the full country, as you travel, it was plowed. Everywhere there was something growing. Either there was a well-maintained forest. For example, my grandfather, he had even bees and all that. Now even the honey is mostly sugar syrup or other sweeteners. The land was either forest, like real forest, or most of it was cultivated fields. Tractors were everywhere. There was something growing everywhere. Yeah. So what's the situation now after so many years of so-called democracy? All the fields are abandoned because the farmers, they have no profit to grow food anymore, and they're turning into brush, non-agricultural land. All kinds of thorny bushes are growing, and yeah, that's the situation. Barely anything is being harvested at this point there anymore. And if you are asking yourself, what's the problem? Why people don't grow their food and sell it anymore? They should be more free to do it now in the democratic environment than before, right? No, they're not. That's the big lie. You need all kinds of permits and registrations to grow anything or to do any private business as such, that practically you're suffocated. All these regulations, so-called regulations of private business, they're actually suffocating it. The taxes were also very high, extremely high for many years. That itself would make it impossible, even if you get all the permits, which you cannot get because it's so much paperwork, and then they require some sort of courses and additional things from you, which you cannot get. And the taxes were extremely high. Now I think they're lower. At least a couple of years ago they made them only 10% because nobody was paying taxes anyway. The small people, they couldn't have a small business, being suffocated from all sides. And the rich ones, which the mafia guys who really had business, they would hire accountants, and at the end they would such special accountants that they make that magic that you never pay taxes. So nobody was paying taxes except the people that are like on salary and employed, and the taxes are taken automatically from their salary. So the way to deal with that is that they made the taxes flat, 10%. So that's relatively recent. I don't know if it is still so, but maybe that would help now, I don't know. So back to the controlled demolition. Of course, the worst was the poisoning that started streaming from the mass media, especially the TV. They started showing crime and all kinds of nonsense, enforcing this idea that the money is the main thing in life, money rules everything, and sure enough, people bought it. Before that, the TV was very much educational and really like pleasant for those times entertainment. For example, they had the language courses on TV. They were very good. You could just sit and learn language just by watching TV. They stopped airing them now, of course. Everything should be garbage. The full Bulgaria was bought and sold by America at that time. It was the American government, of course, not the American people. They have nothing to do with their government, who carried out on the fields this destruction of the country. And of course, everything was officially privatized. So what's the actual meaning of privatization is to hand out parts of the economy to private people. And who were these private people? Of course, most of them were the families of the ruling communists. But also at that time, other people who were inclined to criminality, they had the opportunity to join this ruling class. It was like an invitation.
You know, the Prime Minister of Israel went to Russia just a week ago in Sochi, and it was an impromptu meeting. It was a sudden emergency meeting. Was not planned in advance. So there must have been some sense of emergency. I mean, what we heard was that he's concerned about the Iranian troops in Syria threatening to annihilate Israel. But even if that's true, and I'm sure these meetings are just all secret and we don't know what they're about, but even if that's true, you've got to wonder what leverage was used, and because he said that the meeting helped the security of Russia. It sounds like something a mobster would say. How is Israel helping the security of Russia? You know, uninvited is what it sounds like. So I'm sure, you know, the Syrians, the Iranians are all very nervous about Russia's loyalties and its intimacy with Israel. But, you know, for leverage, probably Ukraine is a big score, you know. They could promise Ukraine will do certain things for Russia, or it could be in Armenia, Azerbaijan. There are many soft spots on a geopolitical level, not to mention huge economic ties between the two. I just speculate on what it was really all about. We don't know. You know, there's a lot of talk about how it's a false statement to say anti-Semite and to call the people in Israel, the ones that call themselves Jews, to call them Semites is obviously fraudulent. Because they're not Semites. The Semites are the Arabs. Maybe they speak a Semitic language they've been taught, but they're not indigenous to that area. So if we can accept that that's a fraudulent phrase and concept, we can extend it to the idea that the Jews are a race. Have you heard of a Christian race? It adds up to the same thing. It's just as absurd. There's no Christian race, and there's no Jewish race. Al Mayadeen is this Lebanese TV channel sympathetic to Hezbollah. And they're quoting some important Israeli analyst on the Israeli TV saying that Israel is the loser in the Syrian civil war. The rebellion will be eliminated. There'll be no rebel groups left. That's a certainty. The problem I have with this statement is Israel's modus operandus is a ruse, is giving people a false sense of security, is not telling the truth, is what they do all the time. So you got to wonder what's in store, and I wonder if indeed, you know, I'm not convinced Russia's the hero that we all want it to be. It's interested in Russia, and it's got to have Israel on board if it wants a face in the Middle East, and if it doesn't want to be bankrupted overnight. So we've yet to see how all this plays out. And you know, I got in a lot of trouble for saying, you know, why is ISIS the bogeyman that we're taught that it is, and you know, it's not going to be long before the Kurds take the place of ISIS. They're the major enemy of the Syrian government. It's going to be like, I reckon this ISIS was homegrown in Iraq. It was totally, you know, hijacked everywhere else. It was totally false in Afghanistan. Syria seems to be importing foreigners from everywhere. But there was some of it in Lebanon, if you like, before. There was an uprising near Tripoli many years ago, before the Libyan debacle. And that had Israel's fingerprints all over it. And it was a precursor of what was to come, this model of fundamental extremists, so to speak. But they're gonna, it was obviously built up in Libya, and what we're getting to make things absurd is the argument that ISIS is on the same side as the West. Well, I've just pointed out that Iran and Hezbollah were on the same side as the West in Libya, and so it takes a lot of soul searching to get over that fact and to examine it and to understand it. In fact, Israel was also against Gaddafi, and it was a major strategic blunder that will live on forever, and the Iranian and Hezbollah oligarchs will not address it. Assad was not against Gaddafi, but Hezbollah had loads of people on the ground in Libya. They were actively bringing down Gaddafi because the relatives of an imam who had died while visiting Libya decided that Gaddafi was behind it. That's the full strength of the evidence that brought this debacle to the whole Middle East. I shiver with fear when I hear ISIS is in Afghanistan. It's a farce. It's a Western thing. I mean, these ISIS attacks in Europe, I don't believe are legit, but that's dangerous to say in today's censorship. But it's not legit what's happening in Afghanistan. It's sponsored by foreign powers, and it's created by all the baddies that we know about. But it's strange, this thing with Afghanistan, that Trump is now going to send in more troops. And he said that they've been against, the terrorists have been against America for too many years, for too long. Huh? They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. It's about time someone stuck up for our country. That's what Donald Trump said. Is that not? I'm afraid to say anything in today's age of censorship, but that is a load of rubbish. Back to Israel, I forgot to mention the quantity of hit and run accidents. Settlers just drive into a Palestinian, often children, and they're killed, they die. 8-year-old girl was the latest one. The authorities don't find the culprit. There's a bit of a hole in this story. If you imagine you could go and help the people in the West Bank, if you imagine you could go there and make a terrorist act or do something against the state of Israel, they'd have you caught in 2 microseconds because of the mass surveillance. They really can know what cars are doing these hit and runs. There is such impeccable surveillance. You're at the epoch of all modern technology, in the surveillance. I just keep repeating the same word. But these settlers are driving into people, killing them, maiming them, and driving away. And they're not prosecuted and they're not investigated. That seems to be the sum total of it. Basically, it's a simple formula. To control the world, you've got to keep people fighting with each other. And that's all we're doing. I saw this beautiful quote. I think the guy's name is Mark Passio. Not that I like all of his quotes, I don't. But he said there's no such thing as politics. It doesn't exist. There's no, it's just a farce. And that really was right. There is no such thing as politics. This is all a man-made, imposed division put upon us all. Well, I finish there, and I say hello to all of you in the West who've had your work of productivity exported to China, which is now the factory of the world, and South Korea and Japan. And our lives are lacking some meaning, but we're more active on the social media, and we're kind of in a semi-retired state. But I think we're just buying time before it all goes pop. I need your help with donations. Please send anything along to any of the links in the description. I totally depend on you. The videos will continue. There's a PayPal address, there's a Bitcoin address, there's a British bank, which is free if you happen to be in Britain to transfer into a British bank account. Anyway, because I've got this internet banking. Thanks so much for looking, listening, and see you tomorrow.
Overlays again in this series that came out earlier this year. This is just bizarre, you guys. Red balloons, the mist. We had that crazy killer mist that came in the UK just today. And it's, oh, how do they know all this? It's almost as if they are showing us in these TV shows before it happens. Now, of course, the pastor says to her, why are you looking in all those places? All you have to do is look in the Bible. Okay? That's exactly what we're experiencing here on this channel, you guys. This is the criticism I get from those that come to my channel on the religious right. And that is their go-to thing, because they've already dumbed down your understanding of the Bible down to about 10 basic stories. And that's exactly where they want you. They don't want you digging into what they're doing. They don't want you digging into all of their deception. The Bible says the truth shall set you free, so we should look everywhere. The truth is the truth. And you're not always just going to find that in the Bible. There is such a thing as an ultimate truth, if you believe what the Bible is saying. And that ultimate truth involves truth about all things. Truth about what our government's doing to us. Truth about censorship. Truth about all these things. Of course, the foundation is in the Bible, yes. But there is so much more to know. There's so much more that will strengthen your faith once you begin to understand what it is that is exactly going on. And here's what upsets me about the YouTube platform, is that they've tilted the playing board away from you and I, citizens, the majority. They've tilted it away to shows like this, who get all of the funding, millions of dollars. They're paying all these actors, studios, and they can't stand it when someone makes $5 or $10 on a video. And furthermore, they're basically defunding the truth, because there are certain people that, in order to have the time to do this, to stand up for the truth, you have to, many of us are living on pennies. So in this scene, he says, you let see, and I can't even say it, the voice recognition will pick it up, but I'm going to spell it J-E-W. He says, you let that defeat you. And these guys represent the Germans. Outright racism. Now, they'll call this art, right? But in this context, it's clearly condescending and pure evil. You know, against, that's in terms of their definition. In other words, if I put up something like that, which I never would, because I don't preach hate on this channel, but if I did, or if I said anything bad about a JEW at all, that would be considered hate speech. But under the guise of art, they can get fully funded, and it's entertainment, right? This is the world we live in of hypocrisy. That I can't say anything without it being advertised or unfriendly, but yet these mainstream networks, which is all of them, right? They run this world. They can say whatever they want. Now, again, the folks at the Strain are onto us, because I went and replied on their tweet when they said the master is here during the eclipse. And so therefore, any clip that I play from the Strain now is being flagged and blocked worldwide. In this scene, this episode is called Ouroboros. And here the old man says there's something you can't run from at a certain point in your life, an enemy, and that is time. And that is what the Ouroboros is. It represents time. It represents the sine wave, which is the bell-shaped curve. That is when you graph out time, that's what it looks like. It's an oscillating, bell-shaped, linear expression of time. Okay? And it ends. All things end, right? Nothing new under the sun. And this proves it. Now, what else the sine wave is sin. That's what sin is. It's being locked in the dimension of time where we all die eventually. That is an illusion, though, because we can go outside of time if we believe in the Most High and His Son who came and died for us, who trumped time. Let's keep watching. And of course, the haters are going to deny the cherry blossom connection, and that cherry blossoms contain the substance coumarin, which is what Coumadin is derived from, which is a blood thinner. Okay? They're going to just deny that. They're going to deny that cherry blossom night, a night that was the plan of Japan to drop biological weapons onto the United States through balloons. They're going to deny that connection. Okay? They're going to deny the connection that NASA launched those balloons on the eclipse, and that the Strain was all about both eclipses. And they tweeted out that the master is here on the eclipse. They're just going to deny that, you guys. But here's another screenshot. Warfarin, another blood thinner. They need it for the doctor who passes out. He's having some kind of a stroke, and they need blood thinner, so they give him warfarin. So there are two types of blood thinners, warfarin and Coumadin. And this is from the cherry blossom. Look at, they got the red pill and the blue pill on each side. Unbelievable. Now this is a screenshot from the film Tank. This was a sci-fi thriller in which they put 6 astronauts into basically a tank to simulate a long journey to Mars. They were going to be in this tank for like 400 and something days. They dropped them down in Antarctica and left them there for 400 and something days, and they all ended up killing each other. Well, lo and behold, one of the dates that they call up before they go into some of the drama on this is August 21st. That, of course, is the date of the eclipse. But they're bringing it back to 2012. So this is interesting. Now, next you're going to see some clips from the Dark Tower. I'm going to try to keep them short. And these are things, everything we've been talking about. In one clip, they talk about The Shining. And they also show the hotel in which The Shining setting was set at in a different part.
His shine is pure.
Shine is beyond anything I've ever seen. Shine, psychic powers. He's Roland of Gilead, last of the line of Eld.
Now you just heard her say the last in the line of Eld. Now that's not a mistake. the word El, as we told you guys in previous videos, means it's a type of tree, the terebinthia tree. And in Hebrew, that is what El represents. Elohim. This is the magnetic field of life. This is the time without time. It's timeless because the toroid field keeps going. It's infinite. That is the tree. It has a trunk in the middle with branches and roots coming out. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree because an apple looks like a tree. When you cut it in half, it's got a trunk structure inside and moves up and around and then connects to its roots as well. Everything in this reality.
You know, the Bible says, the Lord loveth the righteous, but the way of the wicked he turneth upside down. Psalm 146.9. We're all born upside down. That's kind of the crazy thing about it. We all come into this world upside down, you know, when you're birthed into your flesh. And so we have to be converted. We have to be turned back the other way. And I showed y'all that, you know, in the video the other day. So here we go. Let's do this real quick. This is just, like I said, this is kind of an intermission where I'm just kind of going to lay it out real simply for you. A big lie, German große Lüge, is a propaganda technique. Okay, just remember that. It's a propaganda technique. The expression was coined by Adolf Hitler, see, right there, when he dictated his 1925 book, Mein Kampf, about the use of a lie so colossal that no one would believe that someone could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Like Barack Obama, I mean, you know, I mean, do you think Michelle Obama's a guy or a girl? Who would believe that the President of the United States would be living in the White House with a dude, the first dude? You know what I mean? Who would even go there? But all the evidence proves out that that's apparently the case. Then you have Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's a serial murderer. She's a psychopath. Her husband's a serial rapist. And so they are perpetuating the big lie. So they're perpetuating the big lie as a propaganda technique to get everybody to fight everybody, divide and conquer. So what they're doing is they're saying, oh, Russian collusion, Russian collusion, Russian collusion, Russian collusion, Trump, 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 Russian collusion, and misogynist, and, you know, and racist and all this. And, you know, and they're just perpetuating this big lie. Well, let me show you what Isaiah says. It says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. There you go. They turn things upside down, right? They turn everything upside down. They turn things backwards. That put darkness for light and light for darkness. So there you go. So, and okay, so remember, this is Isaiah 5:20. By the way, this is a great scripture, man. It shows the army that's coming too, which is not.
Reality has the same basic structure of this tree. Even your body is a tree. We have fingers and appendages, branches, if you will. So we had decoded Idris Elba, and we found out that his name meant like Enoch in tree. El is tree, Elba, of course. So now they're calling him the last in the line of Eld. El meaning tree. We also told you that this Dark Tower would probably be about a tree. Before we knew anything about this film, other than the trailer, we told you this would probably be about a tree, and sure enough it is. The main character, Elba, being tree, his name meaning tree, and then also he is the last in the line of Eld, which means tree as well. So it's all here. This is all about the trees that once connected to heaven, that once was our conduit between heaven and earth. It's been severed, it's been cut off. I believe that when God placed angels at the ends of the garden, I believe that end of the garden is like Antarctica, the ring around the convex lens earth. And I believe that when they cut off us from the garden, what they did was they cut down all the trees to the stumps. And what's left over is a residual columnar basalt structures, megalithic structures, all over the planet. They try to say that it has something to do with volcanic activity, but there's no way you can have perfect hexagonal columns stacked one within next to each other all over the planet in a stock-like formation. That's not how things exist in nature, or from a standpoint of geologic activity anyway. Okay, this is what they were. They're ancient tree trunks that used to reach the heavens. And if you don't believe me, Ezekiel talks all about this. And it talks about how when the trees were cut down, they fell into all the valleys and the mountains and the rivers of earth. They fell. People are saying that's symbolic. Well, what? How could that be symbolic if they're saying that the trees fell into the valleys of all the earth? That doesn't sound symbolic to me. That sounds real.
The Dark Tower stands at the center of all things. And it's powerful energy. And it sends out powerful energy that protects the universe. Outside is endless darkness, full of demons.
Your average army, same as Joel's army. But anyway, here we go. So watch this. So Hitler used the große Lüge, the big lie, as a propaganda technique, and it was coined by him. Now let me show you. Let's go down here. I want to show you this, that you understand that the phrase was also used in a report prepared during the war by the United States Office of Strategic Services in describing Hitler's psychological profile. Okay, so now we're talking about an Office of Strategic Services here in the United States that was talking about Hitler's psychological profile. And here's what his profile was. His primary rules were thus: never allow the public to cool off. Well, I'll tell you what, let me show you some. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to open up a YouTube. I mean, if you look at YouTube and you see growing division, Antifa clash with right-wing supporters, Democrats pushing towards civil war, deadly surprise, ISIS leads, you know, General Kelly blocks InfoWars, lawsuit announced against Tom Brokaw. I mean, and, you know, refugees and all the stuff that's going on, Sheriff Joe. I mean, Charlottesville, you just keep going and going. This woman is so bat crap crazy, it's insane. It's because her conscience is so dirty. Angry libs demand restaurant owner remove sign like use the right bathroom. You know, Sharia Muslim refuses to appear in court because of Sharia law, and on, and you know, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's violence, 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 hatred, hatred, hatred. Never allow the public to cool off. Never admit a fault or wrong. Okay, so now just, you know, this is one of the most laughable things I've ever seen, just because of who's saying it. Hillary Clinton is a creep times a million. There's Hillary Clinton right there. That's Hillary Clinton right there. That's Hillary Clinton. That's everyone that's not saved, really. But what's fascinating is what she's saying about in her book, how Donald Trump was stalking her on stage. If you go watch the clip, and I have, she walks over right in front of Donald Trump and takes over his part of the stage. Literally went over and took over his part of the stage, walked right in front of his spot. Anyway, so let's listen for a sec.
Do you stay calm, keep smiling, and carry on as if he weren't repeatedly invading your space? Or do you turn, look him in the eye, and say loudly and clearly, "Back up, you creep. Get away from me. I know you love to intimidate women, but you can't intimidate me, so back up." I chose option A. I kept my cool, aided by a lifetime of dealing with difficult men trying to throw me off.
Well, one of the most difficult men you've ever had to deal with is your serial rapist husband, Bill Clinton, who's been proven to be a pedophile and a serial rapist. So, you know, here she is calling good bad and bad good and light for darkness and all that. But that doesn't, you know, this is just part of the symptoms of what's wrong. Those who call good bad. Now, let me show you something real quick. These are supposed to be those that are standing against the white supremacists. Now, here's the thing. White supremacists are fools. I mean, and so are these people. Now, the thing is, I want you to watch very closely. They say that they're there because they're against hate. That's what they're there for. We're against hate. Well, if you're against hate, shouldn't you be peaceful? I mean, shouldn't you be kind? Or do you think it's okay to bash people in the head, you know, like Antifa does? They say they're against hate, but then if you're doing something and they don't like it, then they're going to bash you in the head, throw piss balloons at you, feces balloons at you, like they did in Charlottesville, because George Soros is funding them. They're being paid to do that. So let's watch this for just 1 sec. Let me show you something.
This is our place. These people. This is our space. Yours is on the other side.
Okay, that's hate right there. Look at it. Now, this guy that's filming, he's not for any team. He's like, why should I join this group? Can you explain that? And he said, let's have a civil discussion where no one's yelling, where we're just talking. Now watch. Now, did you hear this? Yeah, Purple Air hater that says she's against hate? That's crazy.
You want to be complacent and stand up for their right to speak freely, then you can go over there and stand with them.
I'm standing right here.
No, you're going to stand right here. This is our spot, which is hate fucking free.
This is hate fucking free. I mean, it's so crazy. Check her out. Did you hear what she just said? Let's watch that one more time.
I'm standing right here.
You're going to stand right here. This is our spot, which is hate fucking free.
Last I was aware, this is the Boston Common.
The Boston Common is a hate free.
That's the face of hate. That's what it looks like. Again, this is an intermission. I want to show you. And the Bible says, woe unto them that call good evil and that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. So that's what you're seeing here. And you're seeing after this intermission and after this little explanation, you'll see part 2. And you're gonna see what's going on now. We're in the end. So Hitler's primary rules were never allow the public to cool off. They've done that very successfully. Never admit a fault or wrong. Well, you just saw Hillary Clinton, and Obama, and and James Comey, and Loretta Lynch, and Susan Rice, James Holder. You know, all those people never admit a fault or wrong. Never concede there may be some good in your enemy. Never leave room for alternatives. Never accept the blame. Hillary, Obama, Loretta Lynch, Susan Rice, James Comey. Concentrate on one enemy at a time and blame him for everything that goes wrong. And that's what they've successfully done, changing the landscape of those that were surrounding Trump. People will believe a big lie sooner than a little one. If you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. Okay, this is the psychology. This is the psychology in the minds of those that are manipulating the masses. This is their psychology. And if you read this, you'll realize this is exactly what's going on. So then when you start thinking about it, then that means the ones that are causing it, George Soros, Hillary Clinton, Obama, you know, the moles that are embedded within the government, the whole world government. It is Satan's world. So Satan is using humans as puppets, and this is it. It's to have people believe a lie. Satan wants everyone to believe a lie. Well, when we get to part 2, you'll see that 2 Thessalonians 2 says, you know, because they had pleasure in unrighteousness, God will send them strong delusion.
I'm standing right here.
If you're gonna stand right here, this is our spot, which is hate fucking free.
Last I was aware, this is the Boston Common.
The Boston Common is a
Hate free is what she's going to say.
hate free spot. Do you understand that?
So that's not hate. You see what I mean? It's crazy. It's like they call good bad and bad good, and there's no going backwards from this, folks. This is not going backwards. So if you want to know what's up, all you have to do is type into Google big lie. The Lord led me here yesterday. He wanted me to go over 2 Thessalonians 2. Everybody thinks, I'm going to show you how mistaught everybody's been on 2 Thessalonians 2. We're going to go break down some words. It's going to be an amazing Bible study. So make sure you get it, because the end's here. We're at the door. We are literally at the door. And again, I'm working on that video, you know, the one I told y'all that is just like, it's just more than most people will be able to deal with. And it will explain all this. It explains everything that's going on, because there's another race of beings that have taken over the host body, and now it's nothing but lies and hate and violence, and there's the good, you know, is turned into basically a null set. There's not much left. Anyway, yeah, it's basically empty. So anyway, all right, there you go. That was intermission. Go check out, go read this for yourself. Big Lie, Wikipedia, there you go. And that's it. And so if you repeat it often enough, they will believe it. These people don't even know what they're protesting for. Infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds. So, and again, part of the big lie is because it's based on psychological warfare and emotional convolution. What happens is people get emotionally involved. They're not able to bridle their emotions. And they, even though you can present the facts to them, they still stay emotionally attached to the lie. And so that's what's going on in the world, the entire world. And the USA is the flashpoint for the fire. So, all right, there you go, folks. Listen carefully.
Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate there. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate there. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate there. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate there, and then they clashed with right-wing activists. Anti-fascist demonstrators broke through police barricades during a rally against hate there, and then they clashed with right-wing activists.
So they say they're standing up against hate, but they're the ones breaking through police lines so they can beat up people. Yeah, okay. They're not delusional, are they? Do you know what the word delusional means? That's complete delusion. We're going to break through barriers, beat people up because we're against hate. That's freaking delusional. That is complete delusion. That is completely and utterly delusional. You're against hate, and you're going to break through barriers and clash because you're against hate, and you're going to carry clubs, wear helmets, take shields, have clubs with nails in them, throw piss balloons, throw feces balloons. Let me give you a little heads up. That is hate. Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. You're watching the desolation, folks. This is it. All right, folks. Today the Lord gave me a scripture that has been so misinterpreted. Again, this morning in my prayer time, I asked the Lord, what do you want to show me? He showed me 2 Thessalonians 2. Towards the end of this video, we're going to have a little breakdown of 2 Thessalonians 2. But before we do, I want you to watch this video.
The director of the FBI, the man in charge of getting to the bottom of Russian collusion in the American election, fired. Is this a new Watergate?
That Russian officials and even Vladimir Putin ordered a cyber campaign to help President Trump. But one thing that they've been struggling to find is the issue of collusion, whether there has been any so far between Russian officials and Trump officials, because there are a lot of leads and a lot of questions that they have yet to answer.
And obviously, they have made clear publicly that the FBI is investigating potential collusion between President Trump's campaign during the 2016 presidential race and any sort of collusion with suspected Russian operatives, Anderson.
The FBI did not want to pursue leaks. They thought the most important part of the story was the probe into Russian collusion, possible collusion with the Trump campaign.
Bordering over the way that they've managed to screw up our political system, basically. I mean, this is all a direct result of the Russian interference in the election last year, which got Donald Trump elected, and which may not have resulted in 100% pro-Russian policies across the board, but which has certainly caused so much upheaval and consternation and chaos that, yes, the Russians are benefiting from it. So this is, I mean, and, you know, you put your finger on when you said this is surreal. I mean, the whole thing is, I mean, this is nuts. We've never had a president investigated for collusion with a hostile foreign power. We've never president fire the FBI director who was investigating him, and we've never had these bizarre scenes with the Russian president and the foreign minister laughing about it on that same day. I mean, this is off the charts crazy.
Sensitive investigations such as this.
That Russian officials and even Vladimir Putin ordered a cyber campaign to help President Trump. But one thing that they've been struggling to find is the issue of collusion, whether there has been any so far between Russian officials and Trump officials, because there are a lot of leads and a lot of questions that they have yet to answer.
And obviously, they have made clear publicly that the FBI is investigating potential collusion between President Trump's campaign during the 2016 presidential race and any sort of collusion with suspected Russian operatives, Anderson.
We need to push for the search for the truth. We need to push for a resolution for this, for the good of the country. We can't continue living with, you know, in this society where half the people, if not more, think this is an illegitimate president who got to power through collusion with the Russians.
With Comey out, who will take over the FBI, leading the investigation into the Trump team's potential collusion with Russia?
You mean impeachment proceedings?
Well, here. You know, I've said all along that he would lead us to impeachment, and he's doing just that. Every day, more and more is unfolding. I told you that I thought there was a Kremlin clan, and these were his allies. I had a resolution back in February that said it should be investigated for collusion. Everything that I know that I've been able to find out, if we do the investigations, the information is there. We're fiddling while Rome is burning. This president needs to be impeached. I believe that. I believe there was
collusion. We need to get on with the business of doing real investigations. As a matter of fact, the press has been better on helping to unveil what is going on with this president and his allies than the Congress of the United States of America.
What happened with respect to Russia's interference in our elections, which we know they did that. All 17 intelligence agencies have confirmed that. And whether there was coordination, cooperation, collusion between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. And I don't believe at this point in time we can get to the answers to those questions. unless we have a special prosecutor. And getting to the bottom of those questions is really important for two reasons. First, and most obviously, whether in fact the
Trump campaign did coordinate with the Russian government. And there are obviously very significant implications associated with whether we determine they did or they didn't.
Presidential election and possible collusion between President Trump's campaign team and Russia.
There is no doubt that the Russians hacked our election in 2016.
Collusion.
Collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
Collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Putin and the Kremlin and be in collusion with them.
Here to investigate this possible collusion between the Trump team and Russia.
And possible collusion by Trump associates in that criminal action that threatens our democracy.
Of Russia election meddling and possible collusion between the Kremlin and Trump associates.
Collusion with a foreign power. Between the Trump campaign and Russia.
The question is not whether Donald Trump actively encouraged the Russians and WikiLeaks to attack our democracy. He did. That is an established fact.
What do we make of all of this? Because as we've noted now for many, many years, and I think as Webster Tarpley coined the phrase, it's virtual flag terrorism. There's no real way to exactly know who's doing what to who.
That's true. I think we can get caught up more on the who's doing it rather than what is being revealed. And that's the entire strategy with the DNC leak, is to go, oh, it's Russian hackers. So don't look at any of the actual material here. Don't look at the things that we're actually doing behind the scenes, because it's Russians. And that's the strategy they're trying. The point here is that it is 100% open and established that people like Soros and groups like the Open Society Foundation are pulling strings and are pushing levers and trying to get you to react with rage, trying to pit you against your neighbor, trying to make you hate, you know, that person down the street, rather than looking at people like the Soroses of the world. The question is, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to play into that? Are you going to say, are you going to get into the rage cycle of the damn refugees and, oh, Black Lives Matter protesters and those are the enemies? No, the enemies are the ones who are making this happen at the top.
Let's start here. Big lie, German große Lüge, is a propaganda technique. The expression was coined by Adolf Hitler when he dictated his 1925 book, Mein Kampf.
About the use of a lie. It is the use of a lie that is so colossal that no one would believe that someone could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people.
Große Lüge. All this was inspired by the principle, which is quite true within itself, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility. Because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. I'm going to repeat that. Because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily.
Say that having a conversation with those people is not productive. Yes! Yes! Imagine. Would you please have a conversation with me? Not shouting, not interrupting each other. Please tell me why I should join your political movement. Legit question though, legit question. Why did you come to a free speech rally if you had nothing to say? I wanted to listen. All right. I wanted to listen to all sides. You've interrupted me 5 times so far. This is our place. These people, this is our space. Yours is on the other side of that goddamn fence. If you want to be complacent and stand up for their right to speak freely, then you can go over there and stand with them. I'm standing right here.
So you're gonna stand right here. This is our spot, which is hate fucking free.
Last I was aware, this is the Boston Common.
The Boston Common is a hate-free spot. Do you understand that?
No, ma'am.
Do you? No. This is a hate-free spot. We are all here for equality, not for your white supremacy Nazi shit.
I'm not here for white supremacy.
So why are you here?
I'm here to talk.
You're here. No, you should be here for equal rights.
Why?
Why? Have you ever been oppressed?
Yes,
No. I know. You're a white straight male. Am I correct? Am I correct? You're a white straight male.
When
have you been oppressed?
When?
Never.
When I was growing up in middle and elementary school.
You have not been afraid to go outside. You have not been afraid to do anything.
I have had the shit kicked out of me for being white.
Good.
So you advocate violence?
I got the shit.
And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie. Grosse Lüge.
Oh, bullshit. I don't want to see governmental control.
We see what you do.
I am not part deaf.
Why do you think you're better than other people?
Huh? I'm not. I don't think that I'm better than other people. If anything, I think that I'm worse than other people.
Fucking hell, get your moped, get the fuck out. You just make zero sense. I don't understand.
That's cool.
I don't
I'm here to try to talk about my opinion. Y'all are here to shout at me.
You shouldn't even have an opinion about this. Hate speech isn't an opinion.
I don't have hate speech opinions.
Treat people. What are you here for? Why
are you here? I'm here to talk.
About what? What do you want to say?
About anything. I want to talk to y'all.
About what?
I want to see you do.
Stop talking about how you were beat up as a kid. No one gives a shit. Say what you want to say. You're right here. There's cameras. Let's go.
Pussy, you never got laid. We understand that. Get out of here. No one cares that you're pissed at minorities because of that.
Nazi fuck.
I'm not a Nazi.
You sure?
Yes. I'm not a Nazi. I'm strongly, in the most severe terms that I can.
Supporting the Nazi fucking ideology.
You just told me that this is a side for free speech. That's a side for Nazis. I'm on this side.
It's not hate.
What hateful thing have I said so far?
What the fuck do you want? You're defending the alt-right side.
No, the alt-right is a bunch of racist supremacists.
What is your argument?
I don't have an argument. I'm here to talk to y'all. I want to get your opinion.
What the fuck do you want to say?
Huh? I don't want to say anything.
You were just...
Because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods.
So I think that this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government
trying to interfere in our election. We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election.
It would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds.
Do you think Russia's an issue?
I think it's a big issue.
Yeah. Where are you seeing the ties and where are you seeing the problems with Trump and Russia?
I see that he's giving them information that he shouldn't be.
Where do you see that?
On the news.
Which information are you talking about?
The information that he gave that the...
what do we want to impeach Trump for?
Corruption, collusion with the enemy.
Which enemy?
Russia, of course. I mean, it's so obvious.
So the news is saying Russia isn't real.
After Fox broadcast their erroneous nonsense, they just move on.
But the story that they were pushing, the Russia story, they said that it pretty much isn't non-existent.
No, that's Fox's take on it. That's not the truth.
Did you hear about the CNN stuff that came out, though? That was all about how Russia's a made-up story? And then did you hear about the 17 agencies? It was actually only 3. It was all from the Obama administration. They're not working for the government anymore?
Yeah, I heard something about it this morning. But basically, Trump is a danger not only to the country, but to the world.
It's an interesting turnabout that then now they try and claim, like, oh, well, it's all just fake news. I think you know that's not true.
What did you think of the videos that came out of CNN this week that show that Russia is basically like a rating story and they're kind of pushing that narrative?
Well, just because it's a rating story doesn't mean there's not truth to it. You know,
Dan Jones called it a nothing burger.
It's not a nothing burger.
They will still doubt and waver and will continue to think that there are maybe some other explanation. For the last 9 months, all y'all have heard is Trump, Russia, and Russian collusion, and Trump and Russian collusion, Russian interference in the election, Trump and Russia, and Trump is a racist, and Russian interference. And all the while, nobody's looking at the real criminals: Obama, Hillary, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, Susan Rice, all these congressmen, liars, all of them. They've been like a parrot. They keep pushing the same parrot narrative. For the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, even after it has been nailed down, a fact which is known to all expert liars in this world and to all who conspire together in the art of lying. Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf, Volume 1, Chapter 10. Thus, according to Hitler, the big lie was a propaganda technique typically used by the Jews, is what he said. The principle is sometimes translated and abbreviated as the pithy saying, make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it.
His initial response was important too, because it gave fuel to hate groups.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Failing to specify which groups he was talking about and adding many sides to his condemnation actually sent a signal to the most vile of hate groups. Here's why words matter. This is how one of the most vile, racist, neo-Nazi leaders interpreted President Trump's comments. Here's what he said to his readers. Trump's comments were good. He didn't attack us. He just said the nation should come together. Nothing specific against us. When asked to condemn, he just walked out of the room. Really, really good. God bless him. Now, England is not the only one who is racist and speaking up for Trump. David Duke, the former head of the KKK, also spoke up, trying to align himself with Donald Trump again.
We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back.
In the past, President Trump has disavowed David Duke and what he stands for. But the president's vague initial comments actually gave fuel to the white supremacy fires, if you will. Their movement took it this way. Hail victory. And to everyone, know this: we are now at war, and we are not going to back down. There will be more events soon.
One issue with him, what do you hate about him the most?
The fact that it's 2017 and we're having to protest against Nazis.
I'm here standing up against racism and the Nazis.
The way we dealt with them in World War II. Kill them. There's no other way.
Racists go home! Racists go home! Racists go home!
Captain America punches Nazis. Indiana Jones punches Nazis. My grandfather went and killed Nazis in Normandy, and he was a f***ing hero. So why is it any f***ing differently now that the Nazis are actually on our f***ing doorsteps?
Racists go home! Racists go home!
Listen, everyone said, oh yeah, you can't listen to CNN no more. You can't listen to the news anymore because it's all fake. Bull crap. It wasn't fake before, so why is it fake now?
The Russia story has kind of died down on those sites.
Only because we're on the racism thing now.
Yeah, exactly.
Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. The phrase was also used in a report prepared during the war by the United States Office of Strategic Services in describing Hitler's psychological profile. His primary rules were: never allow the public to cool off. That means always have a crisis going, always. And always parrot the same thing, Russian collusion. Never admit a fault or a wrong. Can you say Hillary Clinton and Obama Loretta Lynch, James Comey. Never concede that there may be some good in your enemy. Never leave room for alternatives. Never accept blame. Concentrate on one enemy at a time and blame him for everything that goes wrong. People will believe a big lie sooner than a little one. And if you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. All right, folks.
You're just crossing their path, and they're very, if your eye contacts, there's a smile. So I don't know how well I've summed it up, but Cambodia, I kind of stay out of the mechanisms and the politics. I'm a guest here and grateful to be here. So it's a bit of an easy life in terms of legal requirements. You pay for the visa, and actually there's no questions asked. And most countries will want to see some employment or a relative or a reason to ask to remain there. So it's not too full of regulations, and there's no parking meters here to give you an idea of the country.
Sounds like heaven. Sounds like heaven straight away, Morris. No parking meters. You've sold me. Do you know what's amazing about your videos? They look spectacular because you film, obviously, I think you film pretty much around the same area, but there are times when you see a river behind you, you see this wonderful countryside, this jungle, straight out of Apocalypse Now, maybe. It really does look spectacular there.
It is. It's a beauty to the eye and to the senses. It has its drawbacks. You have a huge amount of insects and lizards and animals and even snakes, and you can develop some skin problems because everything wants to grow,
Yeah.
So there you go. It's a bit of everything.
Well, it's 108, Morris, 108. Delighted that you're on. A big shout out to our mutual friend Phil Restino in Florida for introducing me to your videos. They're very important. You're a very humble man, but you talk about things that are beyond the five senses, and that's why I'm thrilled you're on the program today. I want to kick off your most recent video blog. You talk about people's attachment to the system, or almost inability to escape from the idea that we can't stop things through the system. We can't stop the death, the destruction, and the wars. And you talked about Donald Trump, and obviously this is hugely relevant today with everything that's going on this week, and about how Trump's mind has been taken over. And you say very clearly, like all in his position, rulers have bankers, politicians under their control, even us. How do they achieve this, Morris? For people who are new to this information, how can they control the minds of people like Trump and his predecessors?
Well, there's such a wealth of experience these people have, and a mindset that I am not a party to. It's the kind of thing, if I stumble across, I'll run away or ignore, but other people delve into it. First of all, I guess fear, carrot and stick are the basics, and you need to know some skeletons in the closet just to ensure that you get your way. But you can interfere in everyone's relationship. feel that we're very free in this world and of free thought, independent-minded. But in fact, we're terribly dependent and reliant on our relationships. And it's not difficult to infiltrate them and corrupt them. So that's one form of, if you like, electric shock, discovering messages through a relative, for example. It's a very sophisticated question to understand the mechanics of it all, and I'm not capable really of. I've seen people broken. What do they call that? Stalking.
Gang stalking. Yeah.
Gang stalking. Yeah. And you know, I'm reluctant to use these terms because a lot of people latch onto them, and they're not really legit in their claims of it. You know, oh, I'm being stalked, I'm being gang stalked. But in truth, it really does happen. But you've got to be a big fish. There's got to be a good reason for it. But you can have you can be monitored 24 hours a day. I mean, the extent of technology now with surveillance is just out of this world, and we actually do need a bit of privacy. The human is social, but the human also needs a little privacy, and that is totally taken away from you. There's nothing to stop you having bugs throughout your premises, you know, and basically you have no ability to rely on personal experience. It's removed from you because everyone is kind of under orders or under pay or being corrupted. I don't know how well I've expressed myself. But
you've expressed it really well. Some years ago when I was in Spain, Morris, a man was on my program who claimed to have once worked for some of these deep state agencies that we don't even know the names of. So you're not talking about the NSA or the CIA. You're talking about the really secretive agencies. And he said, extraordinarily, he said, one of the ways that people are controlled is, he said, these days we all have laptops and all of our laptops have cameras on them. And he said, these cameras are accessible all the time. And he said, if the deep state wants to compromise somebody, it could be somebody working as a civil servant. It could be somebody working in local politics. It could be somebody working in national politics. He said they will just use their laptop camera. And the subject of the extortion or the control might be browsing websites, might be doing things, might be doing private and personal things while using certain websites, not illegal and mostly harmless. But he said that will be filmed and photographed and will be presented to the person, who will be extremely embarrassed and wouldn't want anybody to know, even though I suppose most red-blooded men might do it anyway most of the time. And it just gave me an insight into how easy it is for those with access to technology to compromise people and blackmail people and get people to do their bidding based on our, you know, hang-ups about sex or hang-ups about ourselves. And to be honest with you, at the time it kind of scared the bejesus out of me, Morris, and it made me think twice about what I do when I'm online, you know.
Well, you didn't mention the smartphone,
no,
which is equally, even more accessible, really, at the flick of a switch. And the kind of reverse scenario is possible. You know, I can go sit outside your house on your Wi-Fi and go to all sorts of illicit sites and then inform people that's, look, here's the record, it's on his Wi-Fi. So it works in all directions. It's a big mess.
Morris, when are people going to wake up to... Again, one of the reasons I love your videos is because you're doing something that's kind of extraordinary. I think we're trying to do what you're doing. We're trying to get people who ordinarily don't listen to independent media sources to pay attention to it. And that's why I was very interested in you talking about, you know, being careful about using terms like gang stalking and other such terminology, because we're trying to reach people who have no idea that this world exists, this secret world, and we want to get them to pay attention to it. We're doing the same thing. We're approaching it the same way, I think. You talk about the presidency being an irrelevance, that whichever personality happens to occupy the White House or Downing Street in London is absolutely irrelevant. I do think. I would have. Yeah, sorry. You believe this? I would have suggested that the evidence is already it's already self-evident, and it should be evident to people already, Maurice, just by what's going on around them. Why are people so reticent to take this to heart and understand that the game is rigged, that there isn't any point in playing it? Why?
Yes. Well, that's the big question. Most of us wish to pay our bills and eat every day, you know, might be the answer. I mean, it's really a revolutionary act to say this democracy is a farce. A lot of people will say that about politicians in general, but they won't question the system. I don't know the answer why people don't question it, but we need to collectively feel a sense of injustice. I also think that we're denied a consciousness of our past, and it makes us easily malleable. You know, it's like milk is made in a bottle. It's as if we were born into this democracy, and that's the way it's always been, and we can never challenge it or question it. And equally, we were born into big cities and concrete jungles, and in fact, all this transience and everything is just new. It's just a blip in history. You know, maybe if we got a better perspective on it and realized our roots better, it might help. But at this time, we're inundated with mass media, and it's mostly numbing us. Mostly it's a lot of noise, you know, a lot of noise, literally.
And it's inducing a kind of a narcissism in people, isn't it? You know, comedians often talk about, and there's some really funny comedians, and they talk about social media, how banal it is. People talking about, you know, somebody will put a post on there, oh, I'm eating a hoagie sandwich in a certain cafe, or just dropped the kids off, I've opened a bottle of wine. Now, there's something much deeper going on there, I think, that people are not maybe aware of. You know, the idea that social media has given us the ability to have daily press conferences, which kind of imbue us with the kind of a sense of kind of self-importance. You know, I'm not saying that people are not important, that individual people are not important and they don't have rights. Well, we've become very obsessed with ourselves and what we want and what we need and what we are and who we are, and telling people through social media who we are and who I am. And it's incredibly negative, Maurice, and not enough people are talking about it. What do you think about it?
It's my understanding in Asia, I mean, they're totally hooked to Facebook, and I feel as if you're talking about Facebook. No doubt it has a broader ways of being used, but people are discussing, you know, what they're eating for dinner and taking a picture of themselves in this situation and that situation, and it is vain. And you know, it's a big psychological question how we've been induced into this selfishness and ego and vanity, but we're in a consumer society, and it is about me first. You see, all our communities have been broken down. I mean, to the extreme in a very short space of time. It was never like this before. There was far more bonding, and there were people, the equivalent of village elders, if not a village elder. I mean, there was something to keep some equilibrium in your life. But now there's nothing. There's a lot of meaninglessness. There's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of work with no importance, no creativity, and people are just falling back on themselves in wonder, I guess. You know, it's like an animal in a zoo if we look at ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's not. There's no spiritual consciousness, and we're smothered in actual corruption in the people that we admire. And there are lots of talented people out there, and I'm not above them, and I don't wish to sound that way, but it's the smut that's getting the biggest currency, the biggest promotion in our lives. So we've just been degraded.
And we haven't come very far, have we, over the centuries? I mean, we think back to Roman times and how bread and circuses were used to control the masses, give them just enough food to live on, and give them circuses to distract their attention. Again, it's timely we're talking about this, this weekend, a couple of idiots, maybe I shouldn't call them idiots, they're very wealthy idiots if they are idiots, are going to fight in Las Vegas. And apparently something like 2/3 of the world's population are going to tune into this one way or the other, either paying for it, 25, 30 bucks, or they're going to illegally stream it to watch two guys. And you look at it and you look at all the furore around it, Maurice. It's taken over our news channels for the last couple of weeks. It's an absolute frenzy. And you wonder, how far have we really come in the last 2,000, 3,000 years in terms of our understanding of who we are and where we came from. I'm obviously talking about Mayweather-McGregor, which is just crazy. Do you look at, I mean, you're obviously in Cambodia. It's different to a big city like Manchester, where I am now, London, New York. I mean, is it, you know, are people different there? Do you find people are different? Do they focus on more important things?
Well, I think they'd be pretty slow to engage in a truther movement or conspiracy theories, but they have a certain bonding with the land, the environment, with their families, with their villages, and it's also been in a state of really revolution. I mean, it's had millions of tons of bombs dropped on it. People have become very transient. It's having democracy imposed upon it. It's having this new consumer society. It's a bit of everything, really. But I don't know how much the mass media has got the people as you described it. I'm very proud to tell you I didn't know about this fight coming up that you just told me about.
Great.
Yeah. No, I think we've got to switch off. You know, it's run its course. This mass media of millions of people tuning into one thing. It just kills our imagination and our creativity.
I'm going to we're going to pause for a very quick break. Folks, do subscribe to Maurice on YouTube. It's 108 Maurice 108 on YouTube. You'll find that channel very quickly. Subscribe to him and pay attention to him. He makes these wonderful videos where he's basically giving you an analysis and commentary on geopolitics, geopolitical events. Very, very laid back. He's obviously very well briefed, very pithy commentary. We've used that word before, but he really is. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the most recent topics that Maurice has been talking about. And I want to talk, Maurice, when we come back, about the Talmudic belief system and its attempt to basically destroy the races. And I want to talk about that. So Maurice is going to stay with us. It's only a 2-minute ad break. Back in a minute on Thursday's Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com, live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester as well as TuneIn Radio. Maurice is terrific. Back in a minute with more from him. Maurice, thanks so much for staying with us. It's Maurice 108. It's 108 Maurice 108 on YouTube. Subscribe now. Before we talk about the Talmudic belief system, is it true, or at least do you think it's true, that the answers, the way out of the paradigm we're in, we can't do it within the five senses, that the answers are outside the five senses? The answers are in the metaphysical, in the spiritual maybe, Maurice. And if you do believe that, it wouldn't be a bad thing to talk about the methods with which the system has used to suppress that, to keep us away from getting beyond the five senses, to keep us away from the spiritual. What do you think?
Well, I think that is what we're lacking. It's an amazing experience. Sometimes you meet a spiritual person. They just happen to be that way. It's a look in their eyes or their behavior or their demeanor, but it's a very enlightening experience. And what we've got is the complete reverse in terms of the people that get a public voice, the politicians, etc. But I also think the church has been heavily involved in dissuading people, because people want to say, you know, they're reincarnated from Jesus, or that they have a vision of Jesus. They tend to hone it down in that way, which might be too simplistic. But it's hard to even label what is spiritual and what is not, but there's all sorts of rules and regulations in the Judaic religion that you've got to be 40 years old before you study it, and even then I'm not sure if you're seeing the real thing. But there seems to be a consensus that we are ruled by an occult, which, if you like, is a perverted form of spirituality. It still has its rules and regulations, but it also has some secret organizations. But we need access to spiritual guides. I'm quite a fan of Osho, by the way. He's a bit of a spiritual guide for me, and I've interviewed someone, Sheikh Imran Hussein, who's been a spiritual guide for me. But I'm not sure how to answer your question. We need to just be available to it. To also, I mean, there are many disciplines. You can study parapsychology. You can study the psychic. There's a College of Psychic Studies in London, but it's a hard slog, you know, to learn about meditation and to turn off from music and drink and all these things. You have to turn off if you want to go spiritual.
I've come to believe, and it's not because of my friendship with anybody in particular. In fact, I rejected it for a long time, that we are consciousness at source, and that's what we are, and that everything else is illusory or is some sort of program. How do you sit with that, Maurice? Is that something you consider, or how do you feel about that?
Well, no, I agree. I mean, as you go through life and you hear these words of wisdom, you start to be able to say, oh, I've heard of that in the Vedas. I've heard that in ancient Indian thought, and it's true. They're saying that they're saying that we are consciousness and just formed in a physical body, and it's very believable. And I think it takes some age to grasp it. It's not.
We have an announcement being made by researchers that they're saying is a huge breakthrough. They're saying that for years, nuclear fusion was the stuff that you would only find in sci-fi books or movies. But right now, science and technology is bringing all of that one step closer to reality, as they're saying that, in fact, there are plans right now to build the first nuclear fusion reactor and to have it done by 2025. This is a reactor that could yield a lot more energy than what is fed into it, and it would provide vast amounts of clean, sustainable energy. Now, they go on here in this article to state that nuclear fusion, unlike fission, involves smashing particles together to generate energy. Now, it's kind of similar to creating a sun here on Earth. Different than the nuclear power and energy. This would be cleaner, it would be set up different, and at this point they're saying they're making huge gains in this field. Now the whole goal is to try to get 500 megawatts of power out of at least just a 50 megawatt input. If they can do this, then they can generate massive amounts of clean energy that they're going to use and hopefully be able to do away with the things that have been doing a lot more damage, like the nuclear and the nuclear power plants and everything else that goes along with them. Now, you know, something like this, along with anything that's creating energy or power, could have something go wrong and blow up, for instance. But in terms of radiation and nuclear components and everything like that, this is being set up different to where they're trying to get cleaner energy out of this and more energy from the input that they're putting in. A lot more details here to this, but they're saying this is a big breakthrough. We'll see where it goes from here. I will continue to update on details as they continue to emerge. This has been Dabu7. Peace.
Can I first say, Zero Hedge with fucking ads. I cannot watch on my phone or on computer without getting all these pop-ups all over the place. Like the Drudge Report makes a ton of money off of 3 ads. Do you guys really need to have an ad over every ad over another ad? Anyways, I just watched, again, I go to Zero Hedge because of the content, not because of these fucking ridiculous ads. But I see that there's a Bernanke is going to be a keynote speaker at a blockchain conference. And for everybody who, I want to point out, I have from 2012, I think, or 2013, been intellectually and morally opposed to the Ponzi crypto scheme money that they have out there. But the long-term con for this is for the bankers to blockchain humanity, to be able to track, trace, and tax and essentially monetize every single asset out there, much in the same way that they tried to do with their carbon Ponzi scheme that they had Al Gore do. But for all these libertarians, so-called truth movement, who sold their soul and integrity, please try to defend this. I saw Jeff Berwick accuse Peter Schiff of being part of the bankster cabal because he's against this. I want to hear Berwick's take on why the former head of the Federal Reserve that went through the financial crisis is now on the blockchain technology bandwagon. Why Blythe Masters, the that almost single-handedly took down silver in 2011, has been with digital asset holdings in Tel Aviv since she's left JP Morgan. Why Goldman Sachs has come out with their own proprietary cryptocurrency in order to monetize all these stocks and bonds and all these other assets so that they can control all the financial assets in the world. You guys can make money off of these Ponzi schemes, but at the end of the day, Ben Bernanke, Blythe Masters, the United States government, China, Putin, all these bigger powers out there aren't going to go and buy your Ponzi scheme. They're simply going to create their own Ponzi schemes. And what I think was going to happen with Ben Bernanke going to this crypto conference is not in support of Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of these other Ponzi schemes, but more or less to garner and recruit more minds into building up what will eventually be the digital enslavement of all humanity. Much in the same way that the United States Army goes out and recruits young people out in Wichita, Kansas, saying that they're going to go fight Muslims and puts them behind of a Predator drone and ends up murdering thousands of people that this kid has nothing to do with. That's how the debt and death paradigm comes in. They give you a story that you're going to be on the cutting edge and this and that. At the end of the day, you're all about supporting debt and death. And that's where this crypto, blockchain, Ponzi schemes are going. They know that these dollars are going to die. The Rothschild-owned economist back in 1988 predicted by 2018 we will have a world currency. The world currency will not be, anything like what we've seen before. It will be some sort of digital blockchain global currency. I don't know if it's going to come from the IMF, the World Bank, whatever they got hatching up, but it's going to come in this form. So all you guys who are selling their souls and integrities and getting other people who think that they're doing good into what I believe is inherently evil, mark of the beast money, are really damaging what chance we still have out there to call out against this and say no to this. I am a firm believer that you need an opposite conscious solution, and to me, having a digital currency, a digital illusion of wealth, is not the solution to all these digital illusions of wealth out there. The stocks, the bonds, the real estate, all these illusions of wealth. They're not real. They're not tangible. Even real estate, I constantly tell people, without a 30-year mortgage at 4%, what's your house worth? If we were in a straight cash economy and the economy didn't have debt-based consumerism for, 4 generations, what is your house worth? It's a tremendous liability at that point, especially when local governments start taxing the heck out of it because it's the last remaining thing to keep their own Ponzi scheme going. So I'm a firm believer you got to stay liquid. What was smart in 2008 was to get into cash, but in this next crisis, your cash will be the problem. You will have a devastation of the currency, much in the same way that we're seeing in Venezuela, where the average Venezuelan lost 20 pounds over this past year because they're starving to death because of a hyperinflation there. That is what is coming. That's what must come to purge the system of all these debts, and so that these guys can create, order out of chaos, this new world, whatever Ponzi scheme, digital crypto thing. And I tell you what, people will lay down for this. And looking at the truth movement, selling their soul and integrity, don't look for any resistance on the truth movement or on the internet. They will simply be shut off when the time comes. You will not hear a peep of resistance when this happens. You'll hear guys like Berwick and Bix Bernanke, they'll still be here. Guys like me, they'll be quieted off and shut off of YouTube, and you will not hear a peep of resistance against these cryptocurrencies. So while you can, ahead of the curve, prepare yourself with real tangible things.
Here we go. One step at a time, don't be living on the line. I don't need a friend, I got more than on the mind. Sunshine in my brain, making everyone complain. Radio in the heart, don't be being so strange. Think I'm losing it, baby, where have you been? Everybody says.
Hello everybody, welcome back. It is June 5th. 2017. Now today is such a cool day because it was 3 months ago I started the YouTube channel on March 5th, 2017, and I am just blown out of the water, so overwhelmingly happy that in such a short period of time, look at what we've accomplished, everybody here. Myself for providing all this technical analysis and teaching you guys, but wow, the amount of profits you guys have made. I mean, I'm hearing 50,000, $1 million, etc. Okay, you guys are just doing a great job, and for me to be a part of that is huge. And I know you guys might say the exact opposite, right? To be a part of the technical analysis and the team and everything and growing that, I know. So it goes both ways, but I'm just kind of enjoying it, and I'm hoping you guys are enjoying it too. I've seen the support from you guys flooding the website. That's really cool. I'm glad that you guys are bringing or sharing with family and friends about it too, because it is an exciting world. I believe cryptocurrencies are still in their baby infancy stage there, and many people that are coming on board now and joining for the first time are at the right time, because there's 7 billion people in the world around there, and there's just a little part right now, a little growth starting to spurt out with cryptocurrencies. And we can see a lot of people are just learning, wow, we're getting in early and we're making a ton. Well, I think it's just the beginning of this little climb up the mountain. And with Bitcoin, I think that Bitcoin has the potential to continue to rise because, like I've said before, but for those of you that are new, the year 2020, we're going to have a halving reward, or excuse me, a halving, where miners are going to receive half of what they're getting right now in Bitcoin. So there's basically going to be a limited supply of Bitcoin coming on the scene here very soon, in about, what, 2 years? So that's pretty exciting to look forward to. I'm looking at Bitcoin today, and Bitcoin's at, come on, $2,705. That is insane. That is awesome. So I think Bitcoin can just...
Hello and welcome to Common Sense TV. I'm your host, the Doctor of Common Sense. All we want to do is pray for Texas. That's all we want to do. And we're asking everybody who are listening to this video, not only we want you to pray fervently, the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much, but we want you to pray, but we want you to pass the video around, circulate it, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Because if all of us are praying, whether you believe in prayer or not, now, there may be some people who say, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in prayer. That's fine. We're not asking you to do it. Would you just please give us a little honor and not leave your comments on this video? Just let them pray. If it just say you're speaking to nobody, that's fine.
Okay, friends, subscribers, and all you YouTubers out there, once again, yeah, I'm actually still here in the Orion Arm, the first world that I realised I was in when the Mandela effect struck the knowledge to me that I had been ripped away from my family. So, I don't know what's going on, but I'm still here. Still.
Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here, and I have an intriguing but creepy report, and one I think you're going to want to share and hear because it's really strange. Well, over in the United Kingdom, there is a beach that had a mysterious cloud of chemicals cover the beach, forcing hundreds to be evacuated and even injured as a result. But don't take my word for it. I'm going to throw up on InfoWars. They actually got a report on this, and it's titled "Mysterious Chemical Mist Forces Evacuation of Popular UK Tourist Beach." Now, that report goes on to detail that the packed tourist hotspot Beachy Head was evacuated and 238 people had to be decontaminated in a hospital after a mysterious chemical mist blew up from the sea.
This is still a very dangerous storm, and while the federal government is there now with more than 8,500 officials on the ground, we've been moving literally over a million meals and over 1 million liters of water. We've positioned Coast Guard assets, Navy assets. But the reality is that this is a long way from over. It could get worse before it gets better with additional rain coming.
The rebuilding phase, that's going to start I mean, once we get past this.
And this gentleman called and said he was a mortuary officer at the base. He needed some information. And I said, "What do you need?" And he said, "How many hermetically sealed infant caskets do you have, 3.5, 4 foot in stock?" And I said, "We don't have any." "How long would it take you to get them?" And I said, "Well, I can call Amarillo by 3:30 this afternoon and have them in here in the morning." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "That's not important." I said, "Well, it is important also, but anyway." And then I hung up. And then he called back later and he said, "I need more information. And you want to know what embalming chemicals that would alter the tissue, the stomach contents, and what is our preparation for taking care of bodies that are laying out in the elements for several days." And I said, "You're the mortuary officer and you're asking me because I do it your way, you know." I was trying to find out who I was talking to. But there again, I was very stupid and I hung up again. And so, but anyway, later on in the day, I got an emergency. We had the only ambulance business in Roswell at that time. And this airman was riding an old Indian motorcycle and hit the back end of a farmer's trailer out here going into the gin. And so when I arrived at the base where I usually back up to this ramp and unload the patients, there was 3 Field Army Air Force ambulance backed up against the ramp. And so I had to swing around. But anyway, we were walking up the ramp and I saw a lot of debris. And so when I got in and checked him in, got all the vouchers and everything signed, I said, this captain there, and I said, "Sir, it looked like we had a crash. I need to get ready for it. And who in the hell are you and what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I had an emergency and we have the contract for all military services. It looks like you had a crash." He just said, "Stay right here, don't move." And so I stayed there, and pretty soon he came back with 2 military police and said, "Get this guy off of the base, he's not supposed to be here." Whenever this happened, whatever had happened, all the doctors and nurses that were stationed here in that area and everything were given, that were stationed here permanently, were given orders not to report. Because my understanding and everything later on that came that the reason for that being that these were all specialists and they were all sent in from Wright-Patterson. And so anyway, what he wanted to know from me, I had seen evidently I was involved in things that I shouldn't have been involved in.
When you said you saw some debris, could you go back and...
I saw that, and that's what started it. But what he really wanted to know later on, see, I knew this nurse, and this nurse, she didn't get orders not to report either, because she was going to join the St. Mary's Order, and our hospital was the St. Mary's. And she would come up like on the weekends and not go back until, till her weekend started again, and she'd go in. When she went in to sign in for her next tour of duty, that's when they were in this supply room, and there were two pathologists. I understood they were from Wright-Patterson. They were not doing an autopsy. They were examining what was brought in from the Roswell crash, what we call the Roswell crash. And the reason that she started out the door, and then they said, "Lieutenant, we still have to have some help. And this is what you're going to do." And they wanted her. And so they'd take a forceps and turn a hand. She'd say 4 fragile fingers, so many centimeters, and all this kind of stuff. And she said she wasn't in there over 20 or 30 minutes at the most. And all their eyes and it started burning in their skin. They were feeling it was getting real warm and real hot. So that's when they just immediately, they had no idea what they had. The two pathologists said there wasn't anything in the anatomy books, there wasn't anything in what our medical schools, they had never seen anything like this. And that's immediately after that they were put in these pouches, put in a hermetically sealed container and flown directly to Wright-Patterson.
And she actually described for you what they looked like.
Yeah, when the MPs were taking me out down the hall, that's when she came out of the supply room with this towel over her face, and that's when she screamed, "Glenn, get out of here as fast as you can." Then I met her I kept calling, and I met her the next morning at the Officers Club in a conference room, and that's when she gave me a little diagram of what they were going on, what they looked like. And it looks like what you see today, most of the little diagrams, the 4 fragile fingers and the long arm, real short joint, the large eyes. She said the heads were almost completely demolished, but they could see. They only had 2 orifices. They didn't have earlobes. They had 2 ear canals. The mouth was only about 1 inch. And that's the way she described it to me. And I was with her till about 11:30 that day, and then at 3:30 that afternoon, her supervisor called and said, "Your friend has been transferred out." And I had her serial number and everything else, but I never have found her to this day. I've never made contact with her. So I think the best thing they did, she was going to join a convent, and I'd imagine they discharged her and let her go. It's a good place to keep somebody quiet. And he came up to me, and he was punching me on the shoulder, just lightly. I mean, he wasn't rough or anything. And he just said, "Look, mister, you don't go in and start any rumors and Roswell's. Nothing happened out here." And he said, "If you do, it'd be real serious problems." And so I just, being as my character was at that time, I said, "I'm a civilian, you can go to hell." And that's where he said, "You may be the one going to hell." And then that's when he really told me, he said, "Somebody will be picking your bones out of the sand if you do that." So it didn't look like a plane crash. It didn't look like aluminum or you burn aluminum, because I've seen a lot of that in stainless steel. But what it looked like, of course, it didn't have any in those days. What it looked like more, it was a real light gray, almost a white. And some of it was a real dark gray, but it looked more like what fiberglass might look like today. And it wasn't dent or anything, and there wasn't any dents, but what it was is in pieces looked like it had been twisted and shredded and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't see any real sharp dents. Of course, I didn't stand there and look at it either, It's just what I noticed on the way going out. But I know it was very thin. I could see that it was very, very thin. I didn't want to embarrass my family for the first place. Next thing, being in the mortuary business is not an easy business. And I didn't want to embarrass the funeral home. I didn't want to embarrass, my father was an old contractor, and I didn't want to embarrass him, because if I'd have come out who was an alien, and all this back in those days, hell, they would have laughed me out of town. My folks knew. I thought it would be very embarrassing. And I didn't want it. Mainly, I idolized my father, and I didn't want to embarrass him because he and I was very, very close. And I was told, one of those sergeants out there said, "Well, let him go. Hell, nobody's going to believe him anyway. Nobody's going to believe this anyway." So, but that didn't have anything to do with it. It was my family that I wanted.
"50 years ago, in June 1947, a very important event took place. The American civil pilot Kenneth Arnold, a highly esteemed businessman, landed at Akima Airport near Washington, very excited. In fact, a short while earlier, he had seen 9 enormous flying objects circle around and then disappear into space. Kenneth Arnold's testimony, which, related by a person as appreciated and esteemed as he was, cannot be denied straight out, and by all accounts, it was also Kenneth Arnold who gave the flying discs the name which we use today. That is, that he first made the comparison to flying saucers, hence the terminology. After Arnold's testimony, many other people, up until the moment in which they were silenced from fear of being taken as mad visions, affirmed that they too had seen flying discs in various conditions, flying in the sky and then disappearing.
The wall will greatly help with the drug problem, and ultimately that's a good thing for Mexico also. We have a very good relationship with Mexico, but I will say that dealing with them, I've always said, I've talked about NAFTA, you've heard me many times, and I've said that we will either terminate it or renegotiate it. We're in the process of renegotiating right now, renegotiating the deal. I believe that you will probably have to at least start the termination process before a fair deal can be arrived at, because it's been a one-sided deal. And this includes Canada, by the way. Great respect for Canada, great love for Canada. But it's been a one-sided deal for Canada and for Mexico. And the United States workers, all of these incredible people who have lost their jobs because of NAFTA, they're not going to be suffering any longer. It's been unfair for too long. So we will build the wall, and we will stop a lot of things, including the drugs are pouring in at levels like nobody's ever seen. We'll be able to stop them once the wall is up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a call for an uprising. We welcome you to today's show. We ask those of you who have not subscribed to please subscribe to our YouTube channel as we continue to expose the satanic Illuminati agenda and point out symbols that we all need to learn so we can see the mark of the Illuminati in front of us and see what they're doing in plain sight, because their symbols are everywhere. In today's show, we'll be exposing yet another symbol. This time we'll be talking about the owl. The owl is the symbol of Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. Okay, the enlightened ones see themselves as the rulers of the planet. They feel like they're the only ones wise enough to rule the planet. That's how the Illuminati feels. They feel like they're enlightened and we're not. They've hidden a lot of knowledge from us. They've taught us fake pseudosciences that we believe when they truly know what's going on. And most of us are in the dark because they've led us in a different direction. So they feel like they're the only ones wise enough to rule the planet, that we're not. Okay, the owl also represents how the Illuminati do their bidding at night, because the owl lurks in the night. And as we know, these sacrifices and these things they do it in darkness. They do it hidden while we're all asleep. They're out performing these rituals and these sacrifices at night. You also see the owl represented at Bohemian Grove. We've talked about Bohemian Grove on this channel. The meeting place where they all go in the summer. They plan out some of the events that they're going to cause, world events, catastrophes, how they're going to dictate the stock market, what they're going to do through the media, what direction they're going to lead us, how they're going to control us, what they're going to usher in, because all of this stuff is predetermined by them. They do this at Bohemian Grove. The symbol for Bohemian Grove is the owl. You'll also see the giant owl that they perform the cremation of care in front of. Again, this owl represents Minerva. They do sacrifice and rituals in front of it. They also have a sign out front with the owl on it. It says, "Weaving spiders, come not here." You'll see celebrities also supporting the owl. Justin Bieber has an owl tattoo on his arm, and an owl apparently in his home, a stuffed owl. These are not coincidences. He's not just obsessed with an owl that he would get a tattoo of it on his arm. Other celebrities also have the owl marking on their body. The tattoo, like I said, symbolizes Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. You'll see Drake also wearing the owl with his OVO, which everybody believes means something about being born in October. It does not. Okay? October is the month they perform most of their human sacrifice rituals. Between the 13th and the 31st, most of the days on the satanic calendar for human and animal sacrifice fall in those days, as well as demonic sex orgies and all of these things. So you see Drake wearing the owl and Bieber. You can also see the owl hidden on the dollar bill. It's actually in one of the corners, as you can see in this photo. But the owl is a very important symbol to them because it does symbol that they are the enlightened ones, that the Illuminati are the enlightened ones, which goes back to Adam Weishaupt, which goes back to the reformation of the Illuminati in 1776. They used the owl as a symbol for them being the enlightened ones, the illuminated ones, and the only ones, of course, who should rule because they are better than we are, smarter than we are. They know what's best for us. They're wise enough to rule the planet and rule us. So this is another symbol you can look for when you're just seeing symbols flash in front of your face. You can't look at anything as a coincidence. People aren't getting owls tattooed on themselves because they have a fetish for owls. It's just bizarre to even think that way. Okay, we know Justin Bieber's initiated in it. You don't get to the position that he is in. You don't get the power that he has without being a part of it. Same with Drake. Same with all of these celebrities. But you have to keep a lookout for these symbols because it's not just the pyramid. It's not just the 666 sign. It's not just the all-seeing eye. When you see all of these symbols and you look for them, you'll see that they're absolutely everywhere. And most symbols that are flashed in front of us are symbols of the Illuminati. They are symbols of the occult and the occult worship of these false gods and goddesses that goes back to ancient Egypt. We're told not to worship these gods and these deities. They continue to worship it and worship them. And it's our job as Christians to expose this to people so that they can see the signs. Because like I've been saying, the awakening process takes time. But when you constantly, what this channel is trying to do, I'm constantly trying to show you the symbols, right? And if you keep watching these videos and you even write them down and say, all right, I'm going to look for the bird cage, the butterfly. I'm going to look for the all-seeing eye. I'm going to look for the owl. When you think consciously and you look for these symbols, when you're watching television or you're anywhere outside your home, you'll see these symbols because they leave their mark. They communicate that way with one another. That's how they know, who's where, who's what. You're a part of it. I'm a part of it. Yay. That's how they work. That's how they've been indoctrinated. That's how the occult works. They speak through symbols. It's like gang signs. Okay, they're not going to go out in public and say, hey, the owl represents wisdom. We use it because we are wiser than you and enlightened and we want to control you. But you'll see them wearing the owl on their clothing. You'll see the owl marked on buildings. And obviously you'll see it in prominent places like the Bohemian Grove. The owl is the logo for the Bohemian Club. Okay, and we know the Bohemian Club is their big hangout every year where they go. They perform sex orgies, pedophilia. They have sex with children, disgusting, all sorts of disgusting acts they commit with children. Gay sex, you name it. They perform child sacrifice there. So the owl is another symbol that you need to look out for, and you need to start getting the message out there to people about these symbols, because when you start seeing the symbols, it makes it very, very easy to start awakening. Your mind starts to process things differently. You're not always in an alpha state. You're conscious. You're seeing the symbols. You're saying, oh, look, there it is. There it is. Not a coincidence. Why are they doing that? Why are they flashing the peace sign or the 666 sign or the owl? Why are they wearing it on their clothing? You can distinguish who's a part of it and who's not. Obviously, most of the people on the television are a part of it. We know that. You don't get there unless you're a part of it. But the owl is an important symbol to them. And it's just another symbol that we need to point out and expose, because there's many of them. But like I said, if you look for them and you see them, you will start awakening faster, and then you could dig deeper down the rabbit hole. But it's important to see the symbols and the signs first, so you could see it in plain sight, because they're flashing these symbols in plain sight. So people out there who ask me, how can I tell my family, I tell these people, nobody wants to listen. Well, it's very difficult to jump in. I mean, listen, my knowledge in this is very, very deep. And people have messaged me and they said, why aren't you talking about, the synagogue of Satan yet? Why aren't you talking about the fake Jews? And why aren't you talking about all of these things that people who are awake know about? Because this channel is to help you from step one, so you can start seeing the basic signs. And that's how you could help your fellow brothers and sisters wake up. Point these signs out. Share the videos that I've done on just the basic signs and hand symbols, right? And you could talk to them about it, almost like how gangs flash gang symbols. Everybody knows that the gangs flash gang symbols to each other. Why do you think that is? You think they're the only ones speaking in code? Of course not. You could show them the signs of the owl and what it represents. You could even start by pointing out places like Bohemian Grove. Why did they go there in the summer? Why are they there for a few weeks? All of these important, prominent CEOs. You get the Coca-Cola CEO. Then you get famous musicians, famous actors. You get congressmen, presidents. All of these people of power and prominence in the world go there for a few weeks, hang out in the woods, running around in their underwear, running around naked. And people think it's a big fraternity party. They're planning our future. They are manipulating, plotting, and planning what they're going to do to us, what the agenda is for that specific year, what they're going to cause, what events they're going to cause to keep fear and panic going. So point these out to your fellow brothers and sisters. Point the owl out. Just a basic, easy symbol to see. The owl, which, like I said, represents Minerva. It's the goddess of wisdom. They are the wise ones in their own mind. They worship her, the goddess, because they feel like they are the enlightened ones, that they are the only ones here with wisdom, and they have the power and the right to rule over us because they have the wisdom, a lot of which is kept from us and hidden from us. But more and more people are waking up and seeing what's going on. So keep spreading the word, keep sharing the channel, or keep going down the rabbit hole yourself, watching other channels. But we have to keep the awakening process going so everybody can snap out of this robotic zombie trance that the entire human race is in, specifically in the United States of America. We have zombies walking around. People on their phones 24/7 being controlled and manipulated. People can't process a thought. So use the symbols as a first step. It's an easy, basic way, as well as exposing the false idols and showing them flashing the symbols that are exposed over and over and over in all of their videos and all of their interviews. It's not a coincidence. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you. May peace be with you.
Necessarily a youthful concept, but we are consciousness, and we're in a society that's deadening our consciousness constantly, through pollutants and culture. But I'm afraid that I think that could be a conspiracy,
Yeah.
That it's being pushed upon the society.
And I mean, you mentioned the occult, and I know that our listeners will be tweeting that there's evidence of this all around us in television shows. I mean, there was a huge not outcry, but there was a lot of noise in the independent media last year when Fox put out a show called Lucifer about the devil's son on Earth. And it's kind of like a comedy drama. And Lucifer, the devil's son, who does some pretty satanic things, he does some bad things, but he's also given by the producers, by the scriptwriters, some values, some good values, some decent values. And listeners to this show were saying last year, 2 years ago when it first came out, they were saying, Richie, this is just absolute programming, this. And when you see very young pop stars, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, doing live shows around the world, and they've got obvious satanic symbology and other such symbolism, it's hard not to accept that something is going on, Maurice. You know, because I'm very much grounded and very much a pragmatist, and I'm aware that when you try to explain that to people who they won't even talk about September the 11th, which I know you've done a lot of work on. They won't even talk about that. So bringing them satanic symbology, you know, is going to go way over their head. They're not going to listen. But yet, a lot of our listeners believe that this is evident. It's in open sight, this, you know, this kind of obeisance, this acquiescence to the occult. All the symbology is there. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a secret group above the public faces that we see. Now, that applies to the politicians, it applies to the bankers, the public face of the bankers, but it also applies to the advertising agencies and the TV companies and the media companies. And it's as if they're thought police. It's as if they're ensuring that the people that succeed are conveying the thoughts that they wish to convey, which may have been a gay promotion or women's rights or satanic worship or whatever it may be. But I think there are people dedicated with their concerns about what these companies are doing. And I don't think they're acting freely, you know, and there's a lot of underhandedness in the corporate world. We are concerned about people spying on us, but you should see what they do in the corporate world, you know. But they steal their hard disks as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, so the ones that are permitted to continue are going to play the game. And those, you know, the game is whatever's fashionable politically at the time. As for the occult symbology, I'm not really someone who watches the media, so I'm not familiar with it to tear it apart and pick examples. And I'm also not so good at being forensic and analyzing these things. I see many people do it very well. But the media companies, the advertising companies are in it up to their necks in programming the public.
No doubt about it. The group that operates in secret above the politicians, we have different names for them. We talk about Zionism, we talk about the House of Rothschild. Here's where, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I do want to talk about, you know, what's happening in America with respect to this attempt to destroy the races and to destroy sovereignty, which I think you do a lot of terrific videos on, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But staying with this secret group, is it possible that people like David are right? And I don't bring people on here to confirm, you know, what David believes or David doesn't believe. We have people on here all the time that don't agree with us, that have a different point of view, and that's brilliant as well. It's important people hear different points of view. But is it possible that there is something non-human working through these people, Maurice?
I've never given that
much
thought. I mean, I tend to turn off. I've just not something I've taken on board. I forget. I made some references to some. It says, you know, I've made references to aliens in a kind of half-joking manner, and had all sorts of comments thrown at me, attacking me for not taking it seriously. No, I'm not. It's not in my framework of thought. I do believe the secrets contained within the ruling elite are the equivalent of something as outrageous as a non-human entity. I mean to say, our origins, I think, are a secret to us. I think they probably know our origins.
You're like me. You're like me. You keep an open mind. I mean, I've read pretty much everything there is to read on it, and it's incredibly compelling. And when people like David, there aren't too many people like David, but when they present it for a day at a venue, and you cross-reference what they're telling you with your own research and checking, it's incredibly compelling. I think they're onto something. In fact, I think David is onto something. I interviewed Rich Terrell from NASA recently, big NASA bigwig. He now believes the world is a simulation, that it's a program, that it doesn't really exist, that we kind of downloaded. And funnily enough, Morris, I said to Rich, well, in theory then, some interdimensional entity might have created that to imprison our consciousness and to, keep us, from understanding who we are. And Rich said, well, of course, it's a possibility. I think you're like me, Morris. We keep an open mind to things. It's really important that people do that. Sovereignty. Go ahead, Morris.
Well, I like the concept of Gaia, that the Earth is a living entity, and therefore it would have a consciousness of its own. And if the Earth does, I see no reason why the other planets don't also have their own consciousness. I'm very happy to see them as living. I think that's a bit far out, so I'm just trying to be on an equal with you.
No, it's good. And I've considered this. I remember as a young boy wondering if the Earth was like some gigantic sea creature, like a big whale or something, and we were living on it. And I used to think that man could never destroy it, because if man ever got close to destroying it, the Earth would sneeze, and get rid of us very quickly. I used to think about this when I was younger. I used to dream about these things. Sovereignty and the destruction of races. You talk about this as a Talmudic philosophy. Are we seeing through the creation of death, destruction, the death cult in Libya, Syria, Iraq, ISIS, obviously funded and controlled by Western intelligence agencies, and then, spreading into Europe? Are we seeing an assault on sovereignty, the likes of which we never saw before, Morris? Is that what we're witnessing?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing an assault on a sovereign state, on sovereign countries. I mean, they've become unrecognizable. I don't know if it's Talmudic thought that wants the destruction of the races, but I do believe it's Talmudic people that are fulfilling this policy and making it real. We see a lot of people with the Jewish identity, and that, I don't know if we're going to embrace that, but I think that's a bit suspect anyway, the Jewish identity. But we see a lot of people with the Jewish identity ensuring that there's migration. And I just can't get over the fact that we're looking at the US, all the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, with all this mass migration, the wiping out of the indigenous people. And we're also seeing it in Israel, pretty much. And it just can't be random in my mind. It's a deliberate policy that's been going on for generations. But there's very little lip service given to it. And the wars are continuing to this time. You can mention these countries, and you're quite right, but they're also indigenous people. They're also people with homogeneous genetics. They're tribes and clans. These are the people that we're bombing continuously, for up to 100 years, and for the last 100 years. And we're doing it mercilessly, and I don't believe it's for the bankers. That's just spin. I don't believe it's for the military-industrial complex. That's just spin. It's for social engineering. It is to alter the makeup of society. And I've lived in Britain, you live in Britain, and we've seen it with our own eyes. And that's how I see it unfolding. And this is all spin. It's for we're all trying to find some money, trying to earn some money. So as soon as we hear it's for the money, the wars, we go, oh, okay, then.
Right,
but that's not true.
It isn't true. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I used to spend years making programs before speaking to men like you, before meeting David and Jordan Maxwell and others. I spent years living with the belief, that this was the greed. And this was, this was the corporate plan, and of course I know now it isn't, and it's why not to go back to this, but it's why I believe David is right when he says that there's something non-human, something interdimensional behind it. It's why I believe that. But it is a depopulation agenda, Morris, regardless of who or what's behind it. It's a depopulation agenda, and I reckon we're lucky if 1 in 1,000 people has any understanding of it. What do you think?
Well, I often get, I'm not sure it's depopulation. I mean, of course they're killing millions of people, but I don't think it's depopulation. I think it's, I think it's a religious elite, and one of the basics is it's a miracle to have children, and maybe they're still following that belief. But I don't think the wars are about depopulation, although we're seeing in the West, the total collapse of fertility and people having children.
Well, it's funny. I was just going to bring that up, and it's great to get different takes on this. As far as the wars go, I think the wars create trauma, don't they? Massive mind control trauma, and they obviously, the migration that you talked about comes out of those wars. But when you look at the 183 studies that said that fertility is collapsing in the West, I definitely connect those dots and put those stories together and think, and of course I'm not judge and jury, I'm not God, so I could be wrong, but I think that these things are interconnected, and they are going to see a deliberate reduction in population. But like I said, that's just my take on it. And it's leading to what we're seeing in America now, which is what I wanted to talk about in the few minutes we have left, these clashes, Morris, between these identity, political groups, these identity politics groups, the far left and the far right. And it all plays into the hands of the ruling elite, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Somebody used the short phrase that America's having a controlled demolition, not seen since 9/11, and I just seized the phrase. It just said it all. For me, it explained everything, and it does seem to explain it all. You can get into why they're bringing it down, but it's kind of inevitable. It's been living beyond its means for ages. The intricacies of the clashes, I'm not quite up to date with, but they're all controlled. All the events that are getting major publicity are orchestrated. There's a tremendous amount of murders in America every day. You never hear about them. But, if it suits a political agenda, it's major news. Or if it's been a hoax or a false flag.
Yeah.
And we're just unfortunately living in an age of being orchestrated. But we could maybe just move the argument on, if America's being brought down through these clashes, why? What for? And I think it's being turned over to Russia, really. Russia's going to be given the helm to be the new policeman on the world.
It's interesting that you say that, because you've also talked about Benjamin Netanyahu visiting Russia. You've pointed out that Russia has a Rothschild-controlled central bank, and this is really interesting because you're right to point that out. And in the independent media, whether it's obviously Russia Today, which is Russian state media anyway, but in a lot of Western independent media, because they're so sick of what the Zionists are doing in Syria and elsewhere, and they see Russia as kind of standing up to that, because Russia has supported Bashar al-Assad in Syria and has stopped the Zionists from rendering Syria, the apocalyptic kind of country that Libya has become because of the no-fly zone, because of everything that happened in Libya. So the independent media are weighing behind Russia, but you make some very good points in your most recent video, points that are very important and deserve to be talked about, that Russia itself is controlled.
Putin cannot have the power that we would all wish he had. There's industrialists, multinationals, a Rothschild bank, totally intertwined with the world. And we've had examples of the world-style capitalists bringing countries to their knees overnight, and it can easily be done. You can bring a currency, you can crash a currency overnight if need be.
Absolutely.
So I think Putin could well turn out to be a great independent person, but I think at this time his hands are tied very much, and there's only so much he can do.
Yeah, because he's old KGB, so his personal politics, which I can't speak for, because I don't know him, but he would probably be very much against the old British, French, American hegemony, NATO, the imperialist policies of those countries. He's probably naturally inclined to be against them. But how much is he compromised? You make great points about his acquiescence to Netanyahu, to the Rothschild Bank being in Russia, and you make a brilliant point about currency manipulation, Morris, because today, 24th of August 2017, the pound has collapsed further against the euro, and we know this is manipulated because there are people working very hard to reverse the referendum result that we had last year in the UK. They want to make it look like Brexit is going to be a bad thing, so they make bets and they change the currency, the exchange prices, and all of a sudden today, Morris, isn't it so convenient, the pound has dropped to its lowest ever against the euro. I mean, are people stupid that they can't see that this is being manipulated by other forces?
Well, the fact that it brings us to the question, well, what can be done about it?
Yeah.
You know?
What do we do about it? You talk about something that was first spoken by Jim Mars, rest in peace. Jim said to me many years ago, he said, Richie, I wish that people could do individual things within individual states, and that we might eventually have secession. We might have states seceding from the union. It's a lofty ambition, Morris, but how do we even get close to that? How do you even get anywhere near it?
There are moves going ahead in California for this to happen. I think it could end up being an electoral issue, and Texas somehow has the legal right to secede. I'm not sure the technical reasons, but it probably becomes a fact on the ground. You can ignore the legalities, but in terms of what we can do as groups or individuals, I don't know. We're a bit powerless. But only activism will change anything. Voting won't change anything. I think we agree on that.
No doubt. That's the key, Morris. We've got about 60 seconds left on this. And I've really, really genuinely loved having you on the programme. I'm glad that you came on. And I look forward to you coming on again in the future.
Well,
Morris is at 108 Morris 108 on YouTube. I've already tweeted links out to this during our conversation, which of course was recorded a little bit earlier on. Great guy with some really thought-provoking opinions and questions about what's happening geopolitically. It's the big one, Morris, isn't it? First, we've got to engage with our neighbours who think that because we talk about 9/11 and other things, they think we're stark raving loony conspiracy theories.
You're right.
They do, don't they? We've got to get them to a place where they can at least engage with us and where we can talk about, look, when has it ever worked that we have gone and voted for an Obama or a Clinton or a H.W. Bush or a Bush or a Tony Blair, one of the most evil men that ever lived? When has it ever worked for ordinary men and women? When have things ever become better after putting in one of these saviors, Trump being the latest one? That's the $64 million question, Morris. In the last 60 seconds, how do we do that?
We need to decentralize. I believe this was Ron Paul's central policy. Decentralize. Get rid of the big centralized government and policies. In Britain, I guess you go back to the counties and the councils and give them more power. But this whole centralization. I think probably we're better off with local currencies. The whole EU idea. God help us, we're going to have cryptocurrencies before we know it.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit insoluble. I don't know the answer, what we can do, but we got to keep asking.
Do you know, the first step, Morris, might be to have the questions. If we can get ordinary, and you and I are ordinary men, and we are surrounded by equally ordinary men and women, some extraordinary, but most of us are regular folks. If we can get people asking the question, I think maybe you've hit upon something really, really important there. Rather than worry about the answer, let's get people asking the question internally. That might be the beginning,
Yes, I agree with you there. Just get more people asking. Well, we've all been bought off at this point. Everyone's worried about losing what they have, and it keeps us in in prison.
It keeps us in check. Maurice, thanks for coming on. Folks, subscribe to Maurice on YouTube. Mate, you keep doing those terrific video blogs, those diaries from Cambodia. They really are terrific. I've bookmarked them. And I really genuinely look forward to you coming back on the programme again. And again, a big shout out to Phil Restino in Florida for putting us in touch with you. Thanks a lot, Maurice.
Thank you, Richie. You've been great. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed that. Caught up with Maurice earlier today because of the time zone, meaning that as tweets and emails were coming in there, I couldn't read them out because we recorded it a little bit earlier on.
Life in communist Bulgaria was much better for the common people, at least during communist times, than now in the times of so-called democracy. Actually, there was no real communism, and now there is no real democracy. They are just two different illusions created for the purpose of hurting the common man. In their essence, they are both plutocratic forms of governing the people, means the rich class rules the poor. Well, at least in Bulgaria, that was the situation. This class of the poorer, they had much better lives and living conditions in those times. We didn't really have any poor people as such. Everybody had a job, just really everybody. The salaries were more or less equal. Let's say in a big factory, the cleaning lady would get only, I don't know, maybe 3 times less than the director of the factory or something like this. Of course, he would get perks, but at least in terms of salary. And with this salary, each and everybody in Bulgaria could afford some sort of house and car. And the best of all was that money was not so important in those times, because more or less your life was programmed in terms of money. And the choice that you would have is what you would like to do with your life. Would you like to be more creative and go into arts or some other job? It wasn't so much money based, because in any case you would get more or less the same amount of money, at least as long as you stay in this lower class. Which again wasn't really a poor class. We didn't have any poor or needy people at that time at all, homeless, stuff like this. No, it didn't exist. And let's say some 10 or 15%, something like that, I don't know exactly, they were member of the Communist Party and they would get various perks, but not really so much to make a drastic difference in their lifestyle. Only those on the very top, like really the selected minority, the ruling families, only they would be super rich. My parents were not members of the Communist Party, but at least my father, he had, let's say, a job that would be the maximum one could reach without being a member of the party. And what kind of jobs you would get would depend on your connections with people, the friends. So the more influential friends you had, the more favorable job you would get. It wasn't really that much matter of money, and that's why people had other values. That was the most important thing. The mass media wasn't so nasty as it is now. There was no violence on TV, and there was no violent crime. It is as simple as that. The children were brought up with the values of pure heart, being nice to others, being a sincere, modest person. People had time to love each other, to care for their families. Nowadays they have been turned into hyenas, just scavenging desperately for money here and there. They have even forgotten to love each other even within the family. Another peculiarity of Bulgaria was the super excellent, relatively, educational system. Certainly one of the best in the world at that time. What pupils would learn in primary and secondary school was 1 year earlier than Russia. The same stuff that they would learn in Russia, they would learn it exactly 1 year earlier in Bulgaria. And Russia was at that time 1 year ahead than the Western educational system. So basically, people would get 2 extra years of education if they complete primary school compared to America at that time. And also, not only the material that was being taught was much more, also the standards, the marks that were expected from the students were much, much higher than now. And than the marks that the students get, let's say, on the other side of the Iron Curtain. And contrary to the popular belief, people were very well informed about the world situation. They were not brainwashed by the mainstream media, although they were trying slightly to do that. For example, in the news, they were showing scenes from the Western so-called capitalistic world, but it always would be some protest demonstration or something negative. But people had their ways to get real news. For example, in Bulgaria, we had a radio broadcasting, I think, from Western Germany. It was called Free Europe in Bulgarian language, where you could hear real news about what was going on there. And also people were traveling, like for example my father, he worked in the Western world, so he was coming back and he was telling us how is life there, how is it in reality. So there was no lack of information. People were very, very well informed. So now about the transition to so-called democracy. We heard there were rumors that there are big changes going on in Russia and in some East European countries, but it was quite vague. People were not sure what kind of changes, and nobody thought it would influence Bulgaria very quickly, or so it came like a thunder from clear sunny skies for us. I remember exactly, it was shortly after 8 o'clock in the evening, and 8 to 8:30 there was a news broadcast on TV in Bulgaria. So